Welcome to the nitty gritty. See, I told you I'd forget what week we were on already.
Doesn't matter.
50 what? Whoa, 57. We have a very special guest. Actually, two guests. One said that she's not going to speak, but I guarantee she will because we'll ask her. But we have kind of we'll call this a special episode.
It'll be a good one today.
It's a timely episode.
Yep.
It's kind of a scary episode just because of everything going on. Just being a little nervous, but we're going to talk about all the racial stuff going on right now. And we have some pretty awesome guests coming in today. And we're going to start it off with Andrew and I's favorite niece. I freaking love this girl.
What's up, Lena?
Hi.
Melaina Peterson. She's very outgoing, very outspoken, loud,
she loves
boisterous.
hugs. So if you see her, give her a big hug.
We love. Lena is our, how old are you?
16.
16 is our 16-year-old niece. Her mom is the older sister to both of our wives.
Yep.
The old sister.
The oldest.
Grandma Kim's in the house.
You suck.
Is in the house. We have all recently returned from a small family reunion in Idaho where we experienced Phoenix and Utah in 24 hours. 97 degrees one day. 60
40.
the next day.
It hit 45 on my drive home.
On the drive home, yeah, it got even
That's a
colder.
50-degree drop.
It was
Crazy.
insane, but we knew that we had some special guests coming in today, and Andrew and I both had the idea that we wanted to talk to our niece, who is a beautiful young black girl, black woman. I don't know. What do you want us to call you? I don't want you to be a woman. You're my little niece, okay? But we asked her on the trip, because Andrew and I have been talking about what we are going to speak to our next guests about. And I really wanted to know what it was like to be a black teenager in Utah and kind of what goes on with that. And I was not super stoked to hear some of the answers. So we wanted to kind of talk to you about that. So thanks for coming on, Lena.
Oh, yeah.
Stop.
You can tell she's super excited.
And we can edit it. We can edit this. If you say something you don't want to say, we can take it out. Just go like this to Brent. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. He's the smartest one in the room. But, so be comfy. It's just us. Just a microphone. Mm-hmm. So,
Lynn, I'd be curious. What if, jumping kind of into it, as you've seen all of the stuff that's been happening with the protests, with Black Lives Matter, with the deaths, right? What is your initial gut feeling? What's the first thing you feel when you see something like that happen?
It's mostly a scared feeling.
Okay.
And then I don't know. Yeah, mostly just scared. Is it going to be me next type feeling?
Do you really have that feeling?
Yeah.
You genuinely feel like, am I next?
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's so sad that that is a very different answer than I thought. I honestly wouldn't have thought that you would have felt that way. And I think a lot of people do. You feel like, especially here in Utah, I can count probably on one hand the number of black people that were in my high school, right? And so I wouldn't have thought that was that way for you.
Yeah.
Is it something that you think about on a daily basis?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Has there been times where you felt, I don't know the right question to ask. Have you ever felt like you don't want to be black?
No, not really.
The
That's
trade-offs
the answer.
of being lame and white is no. She's shaking her head at me.
oh,
what has it been like in your high school? Describe your high school as far as diversity, just so people can get an idea of what we're talking about here.
My high school that I went to last year is a lot more diverse than the ones in Utah County, for sure.
Okay.
So I wasn't sticking out anywhere.
Yeah. When you're back your high school you went to before was Pleasant Grove, right?
No, I went to Juan Diego.
But before that,
in
I didn't
Utah
go to that
County.
one.
Utah County, you didn't go to PG.
She was at Oak Canyon at the
Junior high.
middle. Yeah, the junior high.
Got it.
So describe that one compared to Juan Diego.
That I definitely felt unsafe at sometimes, for sure.
So what happened that would make you feel unsafe that was happening here locally?
Just people would always say something or look at me weird. like every day. Like there was not a day that something didn't happen.
And it's obviously not anything you're doing. You're the most like just quiet, calm, like
You're not going to find like a sweeter person than Melaina.
Never, ever, ever. So it's not like you're going around like popping off to people.
No.
You're quiet, right?
Pretty quiet, yeah.
Pretty quiet, but very stylish, I miid add. So
Her shoe game
I
is
mean,
strong.
it's not like, I think we have this. We're going to talk about. We need to talk about stereotypes, right? I think we have this thing like black people are all loud and boisterous, and it's funny when you read stuff in the news. It's like, why would somebody just call her a name? Like, what was she doing? It's funny. Dave Chappelle always talks about like, I'm a victim blamer, and he just kind of says it as a joke just to get people thinking about it. And I'm guilty of that sometimes. I'm always like, what was that person doing? Like, who would just come up and call you a name?
Yeah.
And I think we all know the name we're referring to. You've heard that multiple times. Do you play sports?
I used to.
Like, what was the context? Like, were they just saying it to say it? Were you playing sports? Was it somebody in the stands? Was it?
Yeah, back when I used to play basketball, they would just like to get my attention away from everybody else.
Like other kids?
Yeah, or parents.
You've heard it from parents?
Yeah, for sure.
For real?
Yeah.
Oh. Kim, what about you? Have you heard it?
Mostly what I get is like weird looks, or people will say something like, is she your daughter? Like you would take a random teenager to the store. It's just funny to me that people would think I just pick up teenagers to take to the mall. I mean, obviously you're with your kids, and people won't say anything directly to me. And I think that's part of white privilege, because they don't say like the derogatory things to me. It's usually tongue-in-cheek stuff like, oh, wow, that's your daughter. Great. And I mean, most people have been positive. I think a lot of times there's people that they're curious. So they say dumb things in a way to ask a question. So I don't really get a lot of the negative stuff that she gets when she's not with me. I feel like if I'm with her, it's a protection.
Well, kids are brutal.
Yeah.
Like you're at the age right now, like I'd say 12 to 16 is the ugliest. Like that is when hormones are raging, and they just do and say stupid things. And man, with social media,
it does not help.
It's even more amplified.
Yeah.
And it's just different. It's funny like hearing you, Kim, talk about how to act, right? It's so like how people, it's almost like they're being passive aggressive, or you can just kind of see what they're thinking written all over their face.
Right.
But in reality, there's also the other part of that that's just like, you're in Utah and you just don't really know how to act because they've never been around anybody else.
Yeah.
Right? It's just this like bubble. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's the number one thing that we have to address is like, there isn't a lot of diversity here. So we got to talk about it because this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like I remember, I think it was Taya, my oldest, like the first time she saw a black person in a store, she was just a baby. And she's like, he looks like an Oreo. And we're just like, and she said it all loud. Like, and he was super cool about it. But it's like, she's 1 year old. And I'm like, it's crazy because it's a rarity to see someone of color in Utah. That sucks. Like, I grew up in Southern California where.
Yeah, and I grew up in Washington, and white was minority in my high school. And coming to Utah, I was like, there's no diversity. This is kind of the worst. Everyone's the same.
Totally right. And there's a part of me that wants to be somewhat empathetic to that because people just
don't know.
They don't know, right? And that's why I think what we're talking about is super important. But also, I think parents need to know that their kids are doing some crap that they need to pay attention to.
Yeah, and the adults do it too. I mean, there's
Totally
plenty
right.
of like when we're shopping or at Walmart or whatever, I walk really fast normally, and Lena doesn't like to walk as fast as I do because it's kind of a sprint. And so I'll like hang back and make sure I'm close to her because I feel like me being with her protects her, which that's a sucky thing to feel like.
It's just crazy
You
that
have to protect
you
your
have to think about
16-year-old.
that.
Yeah.
At Walmart, right?
Yeah. Right.
Lana-
And the mall, I mean, anywhere we go, I make sure I'm close to her because I'm just cognizant of people are dumb and people might think that she's going to steal something. And that's ridiculous because that has never crossed her mind to steal something.
You do look like a criminal, Lana. Smiling all the time like you do.
Right. She's just
That's
so
sarcastic
fun.
for everybody on the other side of this mic. I'm not kidding. We'll post a picture with Lana. We're going to we love her to pieces. And you be around Lana for more than 20 seconds and
She's your favorite.
oh my
for
gosh,
sure.
she's your favorite. Like all my kids love her. Like you're, and that's why it's just to hear you say like, "Am I next?"
Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. And so,
When was the first time you remember like feeling that? Like when was the first time that you kind of recognized race, I guess?
I was like 5, I think.
And do you remember what happened? Like what made you recognize that?
Yeah, I was in kindergarten and we were playing with like toys because like kindergarten, and kids like wouldn't want to let me to touch them because they thought I was like dirty and stuff.
and that had to be kind of a surprise because I mean, it's not like you remember, like at that age, you remember your birth mom, right? Like you just grew up in a house full of white people. Well,
Yeah.
besides your sister Myra,
Yeah.
right? And so that's all you were used to being around. So to you, it didn't seem any different. So, I mean, for you to remember that in kindergarten, that's a trip. Like, that is so sad. I mean, what past that? Maybe something a little older. Like, do you ever get, I guess, any story outside of just the random, like, name calling that idiots do? Like, do you ever get kind of those looks? Like, if you're ever at the mall and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen?
I don't know. Just like me with my friends hanging out. Like my friends are all white. Yeah, but if I'm with anyone else, for sure I get like looks every single time I go anywhere. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter other people of color like with me. Like,
Well, she's got one pretty good black friend, and when they're together, people.
oh yeah, that's scary. I usually don't go out with just my friends. They were like brown. Yeah, I
Wait,
usually
you
don't.
actually think like that?
Yeah.
Like you actually think like,
You have
unless some of our like white friends are with us, let's
Yeah.
just stay in. Mm-hmm. Huh. Oh, that pisses me off to hear. And I think that's why this is so important. I have never thought that. Like I would never think that.
Well, we've never talked to you about this before either, right? Because you
Right.
just ignorantly assume everything's going good.
I will kill anybody you want me to. I will beat their faces in. You have my number. But no, I mean that's crazy, and it's so important for us to talk about because I think in Utah we think that maybe this problem doesn't really apply because there isn't a lot of diversity, but I also know that there's probably a lot of parents. Well, there are definitely parents that suck at parenting, right? But I guarantee there's also a lot of parents that just they would never think that their kid was capable of that. So we have to talk about it, right? Like what would you say to a kid or or to their parent, like thinking of maybe one of those kids that said something stupid to you, what would you tell them?
I would just be like, what makes me any different from you? Like, just like, why? Pretty much.
And have you talked to your kid about it?
Yeah.
Right? Like, so,
Have you ever had that conversation with someone before? With either someone's parents or maybe someone at school? Like, has there ever been like that kind of confrontation?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
has anybody ever apologized to you?
Oh yeah.
How'd that conversation go?
Basically, I just like asked them like why they were saying stuff like that because usually it's like a rumor or something, and I just like talked to them face to face about it, and they're like, "Yeah, I did say that." And then they were like, I explained to them why that like isn't like acceptable for like no matter who you are, and they were like, "Oh, like I'm so sorry, like I didn't know that was an actual thing that happened."
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Right? And that's big of you to talk to them and help educate them a little bit. But I think that's what we're lacking, right?
Like, when did you guys start to have conversations with maybe Lana and Myra about
Myra
race?
is your sister, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah,
Just
sorry.
for clarification. Myra is older than Lana, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I'd say we started talking about race when you guys were really little, right? Like differences, like my skin's this color, your skin's that color, everybody's good. And I mean, do you feel like that's true that we talked about
You don't
it?
have to agree with her.
No, I
We'll
do.
protect
I
you.
know. You know, sometimes as a teenager, you're like, your parents, whatever, mom.
Right.
But I feel like we started talking about it really early because especially their older brothers would, I remember when Jens was little, he would see his sisters that were dark and he would ask me when we'd see other white babies, when is that baby going to turn brown? Because he just thought that was a thing that happened, that eventually a baby turned brown because his little sisters were brown.
That's kind of adorable. to be
It was
honest.
very cute.
Like, I love how kids just have no filter.
Yeah, because he would say, that baby's gray. And that was his version of white. He'd say, that baby's gray. When's that baby going to turn brown? Like,
It's a Woodward, so it's not.
yeah.
They're going to stay pasty their whole lives. No, I'm just kidding.
So we had to talk about race because it was in our family.
Sure.
So, I mean, we talked about it all the time, but
Are you surprised to hear her say that she's scared?
no, because I'm scared for her. So that doesn't surprise me. I mean, we talk a lot about always be respectful, always like don't be the loud one in a group. I mean, it's
What
it's
other-
just part of our reality that no one else really thinks about. When your kid walks down to Walmart, you're not thinking, "Oh, I hope they don't run into."
See, and
a
that is
racist
something I have
a-hole.
never thought about.
Right. But when she goes, I'm like, be safe, watch for cars, like the normal things you would say, and also be kind, make good choices. I mean, I feel
Yeah.
like we add on a few extra cautions to the girls to just make sure they're safer because it's scary. The world is scary and there's a lot of racist people.
Lane, if you could have something be different, like if something good can come from, because I feel like with all that's happened the last couple of weeks, there's kind of been a spotlight put on all of these issues, right? If there is one thing that you, like a positive that you would want to come from this, what would that be?
Probably just to be treated like everybody else. Like it finally to actually happen.
So here's it's a question I have. Like you hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm colorblind. I don't see color. I see everyone the same." Like, is that? I mean, as you say, you want to be treated. Is that how you want people to feel, or do you want people to like see and recognize your skin color is different, but then treat you the same? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to ask that the right way, but I hear a lot
I
of
think
people
I know
say,
what you mean.
Yeah.
You just want to be treated like everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, and that's the other thing is I think people are really scared. You know, like I've lived in and also spent a lot of time working in just predominantly black areas. Like I've been around athletics a lot too, which also gives me the chance to be around, you know, a lot of black people. And they just like, it's okay to talk about them being black, right? Like it's okay. Like they just want to talk like anybody else would talk, right? The whole colorblind thing, obviously to me, that's a social media line, right? Like I'm colorblind.
for sure.
No,
It
but
is.
I'm not colorblind. You're black, and it's great. Who cares? Like,
But you hear it all the time.
and that's just it. And I think that like when we talk about racism, sometimes I always come back with, is it really? To me, when I think of racism, I think of like the South, right? Like the color of their skin makes them this. I don't know that it's that anymore. I don't know that people are truly racist by that definition. I think that they are just. I think it's about a different culture.
Yeah.
I think people are uncomfortable. Like they see something, they form a stereotype or a belief in their head. I don't think it's about skin color as much anymore as maybe it was in the past. And maybe this is an ignorant opinion. I think it's about seeing a certain type of, we'll call it pop culture, right? You know, I think black people have been portrayed so, I mean, you talk about the whole gangbanger, hip hop, you know, that culture, everybody just thinks like he's wearing his hat crooked or whatever. Like that's a bad dude. He's a gangbanger, right? And so we assume, It's funny because I always tell people, I'm like, look, like, I don't care what, if you're a jerk, I don't like you. Like, if you're some white trash meth head idiot, like, I don't care what color you are. Like,
well, even if you're in a
like,
3-piece Armani suit and a jerk, you're still a jerk.
You're still a jerk, right? And so I wonder how much of it is that. And maybe, I guess maybe that's just a different form of racism, right? Just stereotyping somebody based on what you know about black people, which I think in Utah isn't a lot. You know, they don't spend a lot of time. Like, you go work in the South, you go work, like I worked in Southside Chicago, nicest, most hospitable, sweetest, fun people. Like, I love being around. I'm scared to say I love being around black people. Isn't that crazy that I'm scared to say that? Like, I have so much fun with my black friends. There's a warmth and a kind of a zest for life that is just different. I think white people are kind of boring and have a stick up their rear. And it's scary it's scary. Well, she's my 16-year-old niece. Okay.
He's being a good example.
You want me to say, yeah, thank you, Kim. Thank you for noticing. Will you just beep it so I sound cool, Brent? But I think people need to get more comfortable in having these conversations, because it's like you said, Lena, like if somebody came up and said you're sorry or sorry to you, like you were nice to them. You told them what hurt about that, but I'm sure you appreciated the apology.
Yeah.
And you know what? That could be like, that's somebody that you touch that's going to go out there and not only never do that again, 2, probably teach their kids, about it. Like, you don't realize that having that conversation with somebody probably had a very long, lasting ripple effect that's going to go for who knows how long. So I don't know. There's so many things that I want to talk about. Like, I never thought about, Kim, you saying that you're worried about, well, not just you, Lena, you said it first. Like, I don't go hang out with any other of my like brown or black friends unless we got other white kids with us or like a parent. That's crazy.
That right there. And we talked about this before. That is white privilege. We don't
hate white privilege.
I know you hate that word, but it's the truth of what it is, though. I mean,
well, I don't know.
You can say something else to define it, but that's what it is. We don't have to think about it.
No, you're right. You're totally right. That's why I always say, like, disadvantage. I feel like white privilege was created by other white people just to make us, like, I was born white. Like, I'm sorry. I couldn't do anything about that. But I do realize that other races have a disadvantage compared to us. And we got to wake up and see it and help. And
that's how I feel.
Not make each other feel guilty for being white.
That's how I feel like when people say I'm colorblind or when they say all lives matter. It's kind of a sweep under the rug.
That's true. I agree with that. It's
and, I saw a thing the other day that said, if black lives don't matter, then all lives don't matter. And I mean, that's really true. If people just say all lives matter, and it just makes you so angry because it's like, you know what? If their lives don't matter, how do ours? I mean, we're all the same. So, and that's the same thing with the colorblind thing. I mean, would you want somebody to look at some part of you and just disregard it? I mean,
heck no.
I mean, all of us have inherent qualities that we're just born with, and they should be appreciated.
Absolutely.
So,
right. It should be safe to talk about them in a positive way, right?
Right.
Like, I'm sure do you get offended if somebody calls you a black person?
No.
No? Right? Crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But do you, though? Like if someone's ever called you black before, have you been like, don't?
No. Not really.
I'm white.
For sure.
Great.
Well, you do need a tan, right? But it's funny that it's gotten to the point now with social media, and I think this is what we'll talk about today, where I think sometimes white people don't know how to act around black people. They overthink it. They don't, like, you're my niece. I mean, as far as like the whole colorblind things go, yeah, you're black, but
You've known her so long,
Lena. Like,
she's your people.
She's my people.
Because you've known her so long.
And that's kind of how, like, if you want to know how to talk to a black person, how would you talk to anybody that you know?
How'd you talk to
Like,
your best friend? How you talk to your sister
you
or your
just-
brother?
And but it is sad. Like that is, to me, that is the negative residual effect of social media. Like everyone is so scared to be that, like everyone has to be PC, right? Or politically correct. Like they don't know, like, am I allowed to call that person a black person? And what's your answer to that, Lena?
Yes.
Right. It's all good, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is, I think that would maybe be the one small bit of understanding I would ask for from maybe the black community in Utah towards white people, since it is, obviously we have a lot of learning to do in Utah, but maybe not just always assume it's racism. Maybe sometimes assume that they just don't know. Right?
Yeah, and I think I get the benefit of the doubt from people. Like they'll make
Give the benefit of the doubt, or you get it? What do you mean?
from them, because you know, when she's with me, people will ask questions and sometimes it's awkward, but it's like in a kind of a friendly way, because they feel safe asking a white woman questions about black people, which is nuts, because what do I know? But
I mean, you know more than a lot of white women do, I'm sure.
yeah.
Like-
But still, it's not my personal experience. I feel like they'd get a lot better answer if they would ask.
So you're saying you wish that
Melaina.
they would ask Lena?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish it could be done in a respectful way, and I think it would.
Yeah, if people would just take the time to ask me the questions, there'd be a lot more problems that have been solved already. Like you know what I mean? Like just if you ask them without being like racist or negative towards them,
Right.
like anyone.
What do you think? Like if there's one question that you feel like someone could ask that could help open up conversation or break stereotype, what would be the one question you wish people asked you?
I don't even know.
It's
It's a hard
hard
question.
one for sure.
But like, is there a specific thing that comes up often with you when it comes to not feeling safe or feeling judged, that you feel like with one simple question or maybe a simple conversation, it would help?
What if we went the other way? What if you could tell every white person in Utah one thing about how to be better with different cultures, different colors? Like what advice would you give?
I would just basically tell everyone just not to be afraid to ask questions as long as you're doing it in a respectful way that's like not making them uncomfortable. Like, you know, because I feel like a lot of problems come from people being uncomfortable and then they just like escalate situations on both sides.
Uncomfortable and uneducated,
Yeah.
inexperienced.
Yeah.
And and man, you can help so many people with that, you know, and that's, but it is hard because you have to be able to, you got to have a thick skin, right? And I think all kids your age have to have a thick skin, but not the way that you have to have a thick skin. And that is what has to change, right? Like you should be able to go, like you're going to drive soon, right? I mean,
Very
no kid should be allowed to drive till they're 18, in my opinion. But you know, like I would hate to have to worry about my own kid running. Like I can't wait for Taya, my oldest, to turn 16 so I can send her to the grocery store to get things that we need really quick and be my gopher. But I can't even imagine, and this is why I said earlier I've never thought about this before. Like to not be able to just not worry about sending your kid to the store because of something that might happen, or to have to give them a reminder or a pep talk about how to act.
Because someone
or how
else's
to
prejudice might do something.
Right. Like we're in Utah, supposedly very Christian, religious, colorblind. Well, obviously that's not true, but you would think that here would be safer for you than other places, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know that it is.
It's not. We just heard she worries every single day, and she just said it. It's not.
And how much of that do you think is from personal experience or what you see everywhere else in the country on social media and the news? And
I'd say like 90% it's just personal experiences that I've had.
That's and I can't even imagine what it must be like. I mean, like I said, you are a sweet, quiet, laid back person, right? Like for you to hear that stuff is really eye opening, because there's nothing about you that, like, I don't mean this, but like you're not intimidating to me, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're just a sweetheart, and you're a happy, easy to talk to kid. Like you're quiet and you're mellow. Like there's nothing aggressive about you.
Yeah.
Right? Like some people walk around with their shoulders up, just kind of like, they have a swagger to their walk. Like, I'm looking for a fight, or I'm looking to be obnoxious, or you're none of those things. And so that's eye opening to me, because that is what you're talking about, is racism.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. Like that's what it is.
I mean, I probably look intimidating to kids my age because I am definitely taller than and bigger than a lot of them. So like I get that part kind of, but adults, right. I have no idea why that's.
Why it's a thing with adults.
Yeah, no.
And her sister, who's also
Teeny.
Black, but part Mexican too, I feel like she's had a lot of racism directed at her. She looks more Mexican for sure, but she's smaller. So I feel like people say things to her because there's not, like, Lena's tall. And I feel like tall protects her a little. I don't know.
And maybe I feel like you're a little lighter skinned than Myra. Do you think that may be a thing? You're not?
No, I'm darker than Myra.
You are?
Depends on the sun.
No,
Oh.
A good 10 minutes in the sun. Right?
No.
Interesting. For some reason, I
yeah.
always thought Myra was a little darker. Like, and so I wondered if that, like, the shade makes a difference.
Yeah.
And it probably doesn't.
Myra's lighter, but Myra's hair is darker. So
maybe that's it.
that might be.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's super gutsy that you came on and talked to us, and we sure appreciate it. And we love you to pieces, by the way.
Yeah, I love you guys too. You're
You
my
have-
favorites.
Yes, but really me.
Well, hold on.
What?
I'm married to Jenna, and she probably likes Jenna more.
Whatever. Jenna's pretty fun.
Just kidding.
Well, we sure love you.
Thanks,
and
Lena.
Thanks for both of you coming on.
Anyone
It was
messes with
awesome.
you, we got you.
That's right. Oh, man. Especially with a parent.
Oh yeah,
Please
that'd be
text
fun.
me. Oh. Anyways, thanks, Lena.
Thanks, Lena.
Yeah.
Everybody, welcome. Super excited to have this episode. Following up off our conversation with our niece and sister-in-law. And we got a couple of friends. I've known them for a while. So I've played basketball with these guys. Well, I'm on the court. They're playing. I get to just kind of run up and down a couple of times with them. But I've known you guys for a while. Yahosh, I've known you probably a little bit longer than I've known Tim. But we got Tim Drisdom here, and we got Yahosh Bonner with us. So thank you guys so much for coming on.
Oh,
We're excited. We're excited to have a conversation today.
I do a lot of acting with Yahosh, by the way, just so everybody knows.
You're famous.
Yeah, we're multi-talented.
But no, we were saying the purpose of this is, I guess, just kind of jump right into it. But with all the stuff that's been going on in the nation, with kind of the spotlight that's been brought to everything going on with, racial injustice and racism in general, I feel like me personally, I have a lot of questions and kind of beliefs. And I've learned through experience that the best way to learn is to talk and to ask, right? And so I'm not a writer. I don't like to write things very much. I don't know. I'm not like a super social media person. And so what felt authentic to me was to get a couple of guys on here that I know and I trust, and hopefully trust me enough to be able to have a real conversation about what's happening. The only thing I thought of is like kicking this off was when I first got married, I told my wife something. I said, you have to trust me that I'm never going to do anything intentionally to hurt you. And so if I do something that hurts you, please give me the benefit of the doubt to tell me that I hurt you, and so I can understand that I did it and know that it's never coming out of a place where I'm trying to do it. So I can say that, but then the other thing is having to live that, right? And not doing something intentionally. So that's the only thing I'll ask is like, if something is said, obviously we can cut certain things, but if there is a topic that comes on and if there's an insensitive comment, it's not coming out of, there's no agenda. I'm not trying to lead the conversation anywhere, right? We're just trying to have an open conversation.
Right. That's impressive you said that to your wife that young, though. That's a very mature thing. I wish I would have said something like that to my wife in the beginning.
That's the
Probably would
only,
have helped me out a lot.
the only piece of marital advice I
Wow.
give to
I'm
people.
gonna go home and say it today.
For real. Yeah, I was going to say I have a lot
pretty
more
good
time to
stuff.
screw it up. So
So before we jump into things, I want to know a little bit more about you guys. So Tim, I want to know kind of, obviously I know you from basketball, but where did you grow up? Oh, the other thing, these two are like insanely talented.
I was going to say,
like
I think
crazy
there's
talented.
by far the most talent in the room that we've ever had.
Wow.
So
Like,
I gotta come by here more often.
no, hands down. It's crazy.
You guys are gracious.
but yeah, Tim, I mean, where'd you grow up? How did you end up where you are right here?
Yeah, born and raised in Los Angeles, California. So grew up in inner city LA, Compton to be specific. But moved around as I got a little bit older, around LA County. And as you mentioned before, I was recruited to play basketball here in the state of Utah at the University of Utah. For those, so yeah, I get it. I am very aware of where I am today. So let's be very clear that the colors that I chose were intentional.
I actually, when I saw him rolling up in red, I loved it. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, I'm a black dude wearing red in Utah County, so I absolutely understand what's happening. But no, came here to play basketball at the University of Utah, and I love it. I loved it. Loved the experience. I loved the people that I met, and have made Utah home now 18 years later. Wow. So still here, still kicking. Not high, but still kicking. But yeah, man, that's pretty much how I got here. I am one of four brothers, or four boys, born into my family. My parents, they all live here.
Did they follow you when you moved here?
I wouldn't call it follow.
Came
but
together?
They definitely came. They came here at different times, different points in since I've been here, and it's been great having them. And I will say this: it's been great having them, especially today. It's good to have family around you during the kind of times that we're in right now. So keep you grounded. You feel supported, all those type of things. But it's also like you guys said earlier. It's also an opportunity for us to have tough conversations, and so we've taken full advantage of that as well. But that's how I got here. Father of four, 3 boys and a girl, and yeah, that's.
How old are your kids?
My oldest is 12,
Okay.
and then I have 7, 6, and about a year and a half, almost a year and a half, girl.
Okay.
So yeah, the 3 boys came first, and then the girl. So
I went boy, girl.
there you go.
10, 7, 5, 3.
Boy, girl.
Yeah.
All right. That's
3
fine.
kids in 5.5, like 5 years off.
Well.
That was a shock to the system. Huh, dude,
Just a little bit.
right? It's like, oh, I forgot how much work this was. At least you have some, help in the house. Like send the kids to get the diapers.
Listen, man.
Get me a bottle. Get me a binky.
Yeah. Give me a Diet Coke and a remote control. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yahosh, what about you?
So originally from Las Vegas, that's where I was born, and then when I was 12, moved to Farmington, Utah. Lived there for 2 years. Moved to Cedar City, Utah. Lived there for 2 years, and then I finished high school for my junior and senior year in Arizona, Mesa, Arizona. In high school, I got to play against Tim, and he was really
In
good.
high school?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
We met up in Vegas at a tournament. Yeah.
We learned. I think we just put that together.
Yeah,
like,
we did.
earlier this year or last year that we actually played against each other. And I actually remember Yahosh as much as he remembers me. Which is,
because he was one of the taller guards, and I was like, "Oh, I'm about to take. I'm about to get these steals." I couldn't get it from him, But it just makes me feel better that he was a standout at University of Utah.
Yeah, you didn't just play in like the same tournament. You guys were like playing against each other.
yeah, we literally played against
no
each other.
way.
Yeah, and I remember not wanting to make any moves because he's always been. I mean, look at him. He's built like some sort of gladiator.
You don't put your hand
I
in
waited.
it.
no,
He's going to break it.
Yeah, I just remember making a move and he like stood me up one time and I was like, whoa, I got to go around this dude. I can't go through him. There's no way.
I
So
think I remember reading a Defensive Player of the Year award.
I did. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was scoring against a Defensive Player of the Year.
Let's not talk about stats in that game. We'll just say that Tim's team won.
It's good to know.
It was frustrating.
This is good. This is really good content.
But yeah.
How come you moved around so much?
It was for the family. I come
Okay.
from a family of 8.
Okay.
I also have there's 4 boys in my family, and Tim didn't mention that his family is extremely talented, musical,
Yes, they
and
are.
just a family of faith. And they just actually collaborated on a very moving project called "Hold On," right? And that was it was amazing. It was amazing.
For sure. We're definitely going to talk a lot more about that. So,
Right. But yeah, so I come from a family of 8. Everybody's musically involved, but my parents always wanted to move to areas where the kids that were like in high school could do well, and it seemed like we were always moving. Oh, this is a great opportunity for my brother and sister to go to this school or to be a part of this program, and my parents just kind of were led by the Spirit, and wherever they felt God wanted us to be, that's where they moved us. So.
Wow.
But yeah, I graduated at Mountain View High School in Mesa, Arizona, and
Toros.
yeah, Toros.
Wow.
Yeah, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, but basketball's been a big part of my life, music, and right now I'm involved in athletics and music, and I've collaborated with Cam and some
That's right.
acting and things
My
like
debut.
that. So
It's my debut.
you're a pro. But yeah, I have 3 kids, a 9-year-old boy, a 5-year-old girl, and a 3-year-old boy.
Okay.
And then my wife Vanessa.
and what do you guys are both still involved with athletics, right? Yahosh, what are
I
you
want to
doing
be
right
like
now?
Tim. I want to be like Tim. So
You're
I see what he does, and I say, "Oh, I'm gonna try to do that."
Nah. I'm an athletic director at Intermountain Christian School and the head basketball coach there as well. So, still heavily involved in athletics, and we get a chance to play against Yahosh's school now that we're both scheduling each other.
Yep.
Yeah,
AD and coach.
yeah, it's working out better for him, by the way.
Wow. It's a lot of work.
There's no way I could have been a coach and athletic director.
For real, that'd be
die.
hard.
How could I?
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm basically not an athletic director for 4 months of the year.
How long have you been doing
Maybe
that
edit
for?
that. Shoot, this is gonna be my 3rd year as athletic director. I was hired halfway into my first year at ICS.
Okay.
So yeah, I started off just being basketball coach and did some things around the school musically, and then halfway through there, was hired as an athletic director and been doing it.
Cool.
Yeah.
You guys enjoying it? Are you wanting to continue that? Like, are you wanting to go to different levels, or do you enjoy kind of the high school level where you're at?
I love it at American Heritage School. That's where I'm the athletic director. It's been great, but whatever opportunities the Lord puts in my face, I'm gonna check it out.
You got a new gym. You got a new gym too. You don't want to leave there.
I
Is that
love
the one
it.
up by the temple?
It's beautiful.
Yeah, right across
it
the
is.
School.
Yeah, I can see myself being there and just that's it.
Isn't that school going to grow? Like, aren't they building more
They
back
plan to.
behind it?
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's I have learned you obviously pursue what it is that you want to do, and you make plans, right? But as a person of faith as well, as opportunities continue to present themselves, then yeah, I go where I'm led.
Yeah.
And right now, I feel very strongly that I'm right where I'm supposed to be at the time I'm supposed to be there. So
Okay.
yeah.
And we kind of touched on it. You're both very musically talented. Have you guys both enjoyed music from a young age, or is that something you picked up later in life?
Go ahead.
So I've always enjoyed music, been around it, my whole life. Athletics was my first thing. Everybody else in my family, they all got the solos. I never got the solos. But 4 or 5 years ago, I joined my mom's gospel choir, and my mom's the choir director, so she gave me some solos. I just loved it. Fell in love with gospel music again, and built some good confidence to allow me to step out and to pursue some of my own music and share my talent that way. So I've had this greeny fire about music and performing and inspiring through the talents that God's given me. So
Cool. What about you, Tim?
Yeah, so music has always been a big part of our family. I grew up just playing instruments. So I started playing drums when I was 3. 4. I was actually 4 when I started playing in church, which is kind of weird. But just singing, I hated
You were
singing.
4 and you started playing in church already?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we had a very forgiving congregation, so I was able to get into it. But 4, and then my mom had the idea to start a youth choir in our church, and so she wanted me and my brother to learn how to play piano. So I got one piano lesson from a guy who's still, he's actually a pastor in California now, but and then just started really learning by ear everything else, and years later, and I hated singing. That was a crazy thing. Like my brother loved singing. He sang all around school, and Carrie, sing the national anthem, and they'd be like, Tim, sing, and I'd be like, and then so now it's kind of interesting to be in a position now where I'm actually singing more, and I lead worship in our church and that type of thing. So, but yeah, it's always been a part of our family. My dad was a choir director when I was young. And I don't really look at myself as a choir director. I like organize the choir, and I just happen to be out in front. That's kind of like how I look at it.
So a choir director.
Nothing like the incomparable Deborah Bonner. Nothing like that whatsoever.
That's why my parents love you so much, man. Wow. This dude's amazing. We had a interfaith just concert. Was it last summer?
Yeah.
And it was amazing. It was several different, faiths, but everybody coming and being grounded in Jesus Christ. And all these different choirs came, and they had Tim lead it, and it was phenomenal. It was a phenomenal performance. Y'all got to do that again. That should be every summer.
You're the nicest dude I've ever met.
He is the nicest dude.
Hey, I'm dead serious.
But I've never seen him not happy.
Yeah, he
always happy.
Well, he's not always happy. I know that because maybe
maybe it's because I haven't played against him before.
It's not always happy.
He's happy every time I see him.
He looks happy.
That's kind of cool, though. Even talk about kind of where we're at and kind of getting into that conversation with even different religions, right? Everyone can come together with a common belief in Jesus and come together and kind of worship together, right? Even though they can be very different in maybe how they actually practice or whatever that may look like. And so when all this stuff, with the most recent events that have happened, you can go back as far as you want to, but I'm just curious from your guys' perspective, when it started to get kind of the national spotlight again, because it kind of goes through waves, right? Everything kind of goes through waves. It gets attention, and then it doesn't get attention, and then something happens. What is your initial gut feeling when something happens again and it starts to get national attention?
For me, I'm like, here we go again. Like it's still happening. Like this isn't something that's new. It's not. It's been happening, and thankfully, because of technology, people have their phones and they're recording these things. People are starting to believe us, believe the Black community that there is a problem. So it's sad, but most recently, I've really been surprised and grateful at some of the response of a lot of people that didn't respond that way the last time or the time before that. I think that people's hearts are really starting to change, and there are still some that surprise me by their hearts not changing and their lack of empathy. But it's sad. It makes me, even more nervous for my sons and my daughter and my family. What can I do to help protect them and educate them and make sure that they're safe? Well, there's only so much I can do because so much of it is out of my control, depending on the bias or how a person sees me as a Black man. So I just always try to speak up and have conversations with people who are willing to listen, and to do my part. But it's an issue, and I hope that this is an issue that continues to be talked about until it's better.
You bring up a point. So in speaking with our niece, Lena, a few minutes ago, her and her mom talked about something that I've never really thought of, and it's you as a parent, right? Like sending your kid out and being worried about, like Kim was saying, that I've got to tell her to don't be confrontational. She gives her this little laundry list of things, just to go out. Like Lena was telling us that she'll hang out with her white friends, but one of her best friend that is Hispanic, they won't hang out by themselves in public because they're worried about how they'll be treated. Like that blew my mind, especially here. You know what I mean? Like you just don't, I don't think people realize that we have a problem here too. And maybe I'm being too naive. I think that people here just aren't used to living with diversity, right? They don't know how to act. right? They've never been around people from other races. Like I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in Long Beach and in Huntington Beach. I worked in Chicago. You know the door knocking story, Yahosh. That's what we did our famous film about. But I spent 9 years in Southside Chicago, and it's hard because I don't think a lot of people here know how to act. Also around people of color, right? And I also don't think that people realize that some of this stuff's happening here. I don't think they realize at all what is happening here, especially, well, I shouldn't say especially, hearing what my niece had to say. Like my niece is a little lighter skin, like super shy and just to herself, like the sweetest kid ever. So hearing some of the stuff that she's heard was just, I shouldn't be shocked. I feel like I've kind of lived everywhere, and maybe I'm a little cynical sometimes, but it surprised me a lot. And so that's got to be really tough as a parent. What, I don't know the right question to ask that way. Like what is something that you wish, we'll just say every parent in Utah, every parent, doesn't necessarily have to be white parents, right? Like what is something that you wish you could say to, no, let's do it. Let's say white parents in Utah. Like what's something that they need to understand that they don't right now? Was that too broad of a question?
Well, no, there's so much. Yeah.
Right.
There's so much.
Right.
But I guess as a parent, and you can stop me if I'm talking too much, but what are you giving your children? Like, what are you showing them? Are they seeing diversity in the books that you're buying, in the toys that you're giving them, in the shows that you're watching as a family? What are you programming them to think about other ethnicities and races? Are they learning just about their own history, or are they learning about the history? I mean, because really, we have Black History Month, right?
Right.
And it's a month that we have to pack all of the Black history in. But guess what? We got here when you got here,
Right.
Unwillingly, but we got here, right? And we're a part of building this country. 400 years of free labor,
Yeah.
We helped build this country. We love this country, and our ancestors, died for it and survived so that we could be here and have the opportunities that we have. Now, how much of that does your children understand that we have a part in this history, that we have a part here? Because, you go to other schools and you look at their history curriculum and the history that I was taught. Most of my Black history I learned from my parents, and when I went to college, not from my teachers in history class, you know. So education is key. I think that's going to help with a lot of the ignorance and how these children are programmed, because we are programmed. We have bias. And for the parents to also teach their children that racism is not always just intentional. You can still do something racist and not intentionally do that, so we have to be intentionally anti-racist. I mean, there's just so much. I don't know, Tim.
I'm sitting here and I'm trying to make sure that I form the things that I have to say in a way, number one, that makes sense. I am not trying to not be offensive, if that makes sense. Like, that's not my struggle. Because I think if people are going to be offended, I think it's for a good cause. You know what I mean?
And you bring up a good point. I think that we're all so scared to offend, like with social media now. Like you can't say it. Like me as a business owner on social media, I have to be so careful, and it doesn't matter. Like you're going to be wrong either way. But I think that that's a big wall for this type of dialogue.
Absolutely,
because I think there are a lot of people that are scared to speak up because they're scared. It was funny, we were talking to Melaina about, like, does it offend you if we call you a Black person? Mm-hmm. Like if we refer to Black, it's amazing how many people are scared to just say Black people or a Black person instead. Like, am I supposed to say African American? Am I supposed to say, it's like, they're just talk to them like anybody else. You're white, they're Black. It's all good. Just talk. But what you bring up is, I think, one of our biggest roadblocks.
Sure. And to make people uncomfortable, like that's also like not a thing anymore, because everybody's just so weak and sensitive and nobody wants to say anything. But I think the thing that I'm struggling with it, as I continue to hear it, and I hear education, because I think that's very important. I think it's extremely important to educate in the home, right? You said what would we want to communicate to white parents? I think the thing that I'm struggling with though is, why do we need education in order to just be kind to other humans? I think that's the thing that I'm just like, because I think it's great. I think we should be educated. I think there should be a level of, hey, I should know, this about that. And I've been saying it, but it just dawned on me in this second and listening to some of the fixes, right? Like education, know my history in order to treat me with respect. Like, why do you need to read a book in order to respect a human being?
And to be more clear, maybe I should have said Utah.
This isn't true.
You know what I mean?
No. It's not even about what you said or what anybody else has said. It's just the reality that one of the fixes in order to change being a racist, which to me is just dehumanization of people based on their color, one of the fixes is to become educated. Like, I don't need education in order for me to be a nice person to another person, or to an animal, or to, you know what I mean? Like, just to be a good person. For sure. I don't need you to know about Martin Luther King in order to know how to treat me. I just need you to treat me like a human, like you know what I mean? So that's kind of the one thing that just kind of popped into my head. So to answer your question further, education absolutely is a huge deal. We also have, and your host touched on it too. And this guy said, and I've been repeating this ever since I heard it, and I just heard it last week, white guy who I work with. He says this, and he heard it from somewhere else. He said, every white person is a racist until you do something about it. To not be racist. So until you've done an action or spoke up, then you're racist because we were born into a system that has, whether directly or indirectly, promoted the superiority of a particular race. You happen to be in that race. That makes you not an overt racist, not an intentional racist, but until you actually take the opposite stance in your action, in your communication, then that's where he feels. And it's a controversial statement, and it's hard to stomach, or it's hard to hear, I'm sure. But I mean, as I think about it more, I think it's a safe place to start, because it'll actually move those who don't want to be considered that into a place of action, as opposed to standing idly by and just hoping it blows over, or waiting until, like your host said, or like Drew said, it'll just die down and it'll come back later. Or we're in a space right now where I feel like it's not going anywhere. It's not going to die down, because we're not going to let the narrative die down. I feel like this is one of those moments that you don't get very many times in history, where now it's like, for the lack of a better, it's nut crunching time. Like, it's, I don't know if you got to edit that out, but
nut crunching. Okay, good. I think that's a cereal, isn't it?
That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, make it whatever you want. But people's feet are to the fire. For sure. You know what I mean? And so I think education is a huge deal. I think intentional relationship with people that don't look like you is another big deal. Like, go out of your way and don't be fake about it. But go out of your way to create relationship with somebody who doesn't look like you, because they're going to see the world from a different place. And then in your communication, because we have relationship, like, I know Drew through hoops. I'm just meeting you for the first time, but I can feel the energy, and I feel like I'm in a safe space, right? Well, I don't know if it was a spark. Come on. I want to go on record to say I felt a spark in a room full of 5 dudes. I'm not there yet. But it allows us the opportunity to say, really, to screw it up. Right. Like, I can screw it up in a relationship because I know the person that I'm dealing with is gonna be forgiving. They're gonna know my heart. They're gonna know that I didn't, like you said to your wife, yo, I'm gonna probably hurt you, but in order for this to work, you gotta know I'm not doing it on purpose.
And you gotta talk about it.
And you gotta say it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this world doesn't say anything anymore. Everything is through the freaking, social media, through Instagram, what you want me to see about you. Like, nobody really posts it. They have like real struggles. Like, nobody does it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You bring up another point about, the other day there were some protesters out on just right out here, State Street and University Parkway. Yeah. And half of them were taking pictures of themselves, like holding up signs. And that's the hard thing. Like, how do we take a stand, or how do we do the opposite of, let's say we all start at, like you said, racist, right? Yeah. Until we take a stand. How do people do that, especially in an area like Utah where there isn't a huge black community here, right? Mm-hmm. what would you say that people here can do and not? I feel like social media, so many people want to look like the blackout thing the other day.
Yeah.
That really, I don't know. I felt like that was so lame. Like I'm like, really? That's all you got? Like you're just gonna put a black square in your social media and that's you making a difference? I don't know. What do you guys think about, like, did that make a difference? Is that
to me?
It did.
It did to me. I thought about some of my friends and I said, I wonder if they did that. I wonder if they did something. I wonder if they've said something. And I looked, and you know, and
that
a lot of them
matters to
did.
you.
It matters to me, you know, that they did something. Like Tim said, that they, whether you said something, you post that you're aware, you know, and that you're sharing that, so that other people can become aware of these issues. Martin Luther King said, what did he say? It was a great quote. In the end, we won't remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends.
Wow.
You know, and so I believe that.
It's funny. Like I find myself being worried about, what do they call it? Like virtue signaling. Is that the snowflake term for it? Like you're just doing it to show off. Like I'm always worried about.
That.
I don't want people.
But
to
I'm still
think
grateful.
But see,
because somebody might see it and that might.
That's
cause
really.
to think.
That's what I need to hear. Like that's a really.
And I'm not going to judge anybody's heart. I don't know. Right. I only know what you show me.
Well, and even if they did it maybe out of a bad place, someone might have seen it in the right place that does something. You know, who knows? Who knows what's going to cause someone to take a half second and think.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yahosh, what's your wife's name?
Vanessa.
Okay. So I read a comment on I was looking through your Facebook post before you came in. And it's funny. Vanessa said something. She commented on somebody's post. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was Roger Goodell. Like now he's coming out saying we were wrong, right? And of course, the first thing I think of is just like, whatever, dude. Too little, too late. Shut up. Like it's going to cost you some money now. Like you might have to give Colin Kaepernick a job again, and now you're saying that we were wrong. But your wife said something really interesting. She's like, you know what? Even if it didn't come from the right place, it's still the right thing. Like somebody's going to hear something. So it's a step. It's a start. And then hearing you say what you just said about the blackout thing, which I thought was just like, is that really the best we can do? But I never thought of it in that context. And to me, that's what this is about. Like, I want to hear what I can do to help my black friends and like help. How do I show solidarity? How do I help? And not just have it be like a social media picture, but to find out that does help. Like that quote, that's a powerful quote. I've never heard it. So that's really eye-opening to me.
Well, and for me, what this has done is it's kind of exposed in my life, call it ignorance, call it whatever you want to call it, about what really is happening, right? I mean, there's so many things that we could say that people are automatically going to choose a side. You know what I mean? I can say Black Lives Matter, and it's going.
There's an argument.
Someone's going to choose something, right?
So Black Lives. I don't know if Black Lives Matter.
You know what I mean? But it's real.
It's real.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'll be the first to admit when it first came up, I was like, okay, you know, but I took a different side. But then, gratefully, I've been given the opportunity to study and to learn and to hopefully progress in the way that I think in things. And I think it's okay to change. Mm-hmm. You know, I think a lot of people get caught up in, well, I felt this way before, or I said this thing before, I can't go against that now. Mm-hmm. And that's not who we are as human beings. We are here on this earth to grow, to develop. And if we aren't doing that, then how are we progressing in this life, right? Yeah. And so for me specifically, like this last week, so I always try to do a lot of research on our podcast guests.
Somebody has to. He's the organized one.
And so I spent time trying to research. And so this was very different. And I had so many discussions with my wife off of articles or quotes or things that I was learning or epiphanies that I was having, right? And for me, like, I want to talk about this a little bit because it is a hot topic, but hopefully we can have a good discussion on Black Lives Matter specifically, right? Like the thing that hit me, because I'm a visual learner, right? Or I think that Christ was the best teacher of all time because he taught in parables and stories, that he tried to teach to comprehension to the people that he was with. And so for me, when I hear things like, for one reason or another, certain things click. And so I read something and it was talking about Christ, and he said when he left the 90 and 9 to find the one, he was not saying the 90 and 9 are not important. That's not what he's about. But he left them to find the one, or to find the sick and to find the afflicted. And I don't know what it was, but for that, it clicked for me. By saying Black Lives Matter, you are not saying all lives don't matter, right? But I feel like that's a very common thing. Why do you think that that's kind of people's initial stance when they hear it? Why do you feel like people feel like they have to say, if Black Lives Matter, other lives don't? Like why is it Black Lives Matter versus all lives matter? Like, why is that even a topic?
And that's a question I would want to ask you. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I don't.
I have an answer.
Yeah.
They don't want to embrace the reality that there's a problem.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's very simple. Like, if you can hear in Black Lives Matter that everyone else's life doesn't matter, if you can go that far, as you know, you're doing that intentionally. You're
burying your head in the sand.
That's all you're doing.
Yeah.
And so all lives matter is just, I mean, and this is, I don't know if you saw the clip from Michael, the comedian, and he was talking about, he had a skit, and he's talking about, let's talk about Black Lives Matter. Like, matter.
Yes.
Like, we're just trying to matter. Like, and we have people who are like against Black Lives Matter. Like, we're not trying to, Black lives are not superior, or we just got like want to matter. And he basically argues that we're always going for like the lowest common denominator. Like, we want civil rights. Like, just be civil. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people that want equal rights. We're not even asking for equal. We're just asking for civil rights. You know, those are the type of things that when you look at people, you're like, really? You have a problem with saying Black Lives Matter? Like, and you can look at the climate that we're in. You can see the things, you can see the reasons why we're posting or why we're saying that or why Black Lives Matter is a movement, but you can still generate an idea that says, well, you guys don't, no, it's all lives matter. Like, it's because you don't want to face it. So
I agree. And something else that I read on that was like, when the Boston bombings happened and people were posting Boston strong, like there was no cities throwing up their arms being like, well, what about Salt Lake?
Yeah.
Salt Lake strong. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or when the Vegas was shooting, everyone was like, we stand with Vegas. Like everyone was all about Vegas and coming together.
Yeah.
You know, but it wasn't like, oh, Salt Lake, you don't matter.
Paris.
Everything, right?
That's a really interesting point.
You know, like, or if it's breast cancer awareness, I'm not saying colon cancer doesn't matter. I'm saying breast cancer, like,
we're just focusing on breast cancer.
Yeah.
There's something unique about breast cancer where I feel like it needs more attention.
It needs a little more help.
Yeah.
And to me, that's confirming what you just said, Tim.
Yeah.
That we're just burying our heads in the sand. Because we'll speak up loud for Vegas strong or Paris.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and that's okay. Like, but if it comes to something like Black Lives Matter, you know, for me, I'm just going to be honest. Like, sometimes I look at the saying Black Lives Matter, that means something. But I think maybe sometimes people, especially here, it's a more conservative place, right? More, we'll say right wing, Republican, whatever. I feel like sometimes conservative TV tries to villainize not the term, but the group, the actual.
Yep.
I think a lot of people.
I've seen that.
They don't.
Well, they confuse the method with the message.
Yes, they're like, well, if I say Black Lives Matter, that means I'm supporting that organization, right? And I think that I wonder how much of that plays into that, because I think I might be guilty of that.
I think
if I'm being real, like I look at that like, of course Black Lives Matter, but I guess to me it's an organization that I don't know anything about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we just want,
and so there's that disconnect for me.
I think in order first of all, in order for any of this to work, I think we've got to separate ourselves politically.
Oh man.
There's no way to do this with that. Like that marriage that hasn't worked.
See, and you're right. Like, I feel like politically we're more divided than we ever have been, which makes this, what we're talking about, I imagine, maybe even harder than it's ever been.
It's hard.
Because everyone is on a side, and they will not, like Mitt Romney, okay? Like, he marched yesterday with Black Lives Matter, which I thought was really cool. Everyone hates him here now. Not because of yesterday, but just because he does what he wants. Like, he doesn't stick to the party line. I've always kind of respected him for that. But it's just proof that if you don't play by your team's rules, you can't be on the team anymore. You know what I mean? Which makes this discourse that we're having, at least for the general public, even harder, because you can't be on both sides of the fence. And if black people are on the Democratic side and I'm on the Republican side, like, we can't talk about that. Like, we have nothing to talk about. That's crazy.
Yeah. No, yeah, you can't be, it can't be about, I mean, because I don't know, Fox News, I guess, is like is that the right side?
They're horrible.
I don't know.
But yeah.
And then you got CNN.
They're all horrible.
That's on the, right? And so, like, I get all my, like, Republican black friends who, yeah, he was murdered, but, or we don't have all the facts, or like, no. That is a political stance. That's your inability to separate yourself from some sort of party that you're attached to, which I am not attached to any party. I'm attached to the party that's going to do the right thing, that's going to make the next right choice. That's the party I'm attached to. As my mom just always said, hey, whoever's doing what's right, do it. Follow that. When they do what's wrong, don't follow that. So to me, there's wrong on both sides. There's media, there's race baiting on both sides. There's all of these things on both sides of the spectrum. And if people would just be human, just get back to being humans, like, that will guide you. You know that what you're seeing on TV when you see that guy's knee on his neck is a bad thing. There's
anyone who can
nothing-
see that and say that's not
there's no but that goes behind that. But he was this, or but the criminal was, let's dig up his history. He is dead.
You see that video? Like, I'll be honest. In the beginning, I thought that, like, what? I mean, was he committing a crime? He had to be committing a crime. Why would the police be there?
Absolutely.
And I'm guilty of that. Like, the first couple of days, that's how I thought. Like, okay, what? I have so many police officer friends, and their job sucks. Like, it is so hard. Like, they deal with so many assholes day in, day out. And it is a thankless job. So sometimes I do catch myself really like, look, they're not all like that guy, right? But then I finally, like, pulled my head out of the sand, which I'm learning, right? And watched the video. And it was horrifying. And I don't care. Honestly, like, aside from, I can't think of too many crimes, hardly any crimes that would merit such a horrible, violent, just the look on his face, right? It's horrible. Like, so once you see that video, all of that goes out the window. Like, there's something evil happening right there. And I don't care what he did. Like, horrible.
Yeah.
So you're right.
And then I think part of that is, I think it's easy when, talking about, like, the Black Lives Matter, right? Like, I think sometimes, like, I know maybe, like, I'll being honest, like, this has been part of my growth, right? Is the first time when I heard that, I was like, I feel, and this is so, it's so unfair. It's such a, I don't even know how to say it.
No
but
disclaimers necessary.
You know what I mean? But it's like, I feel like someone's attacking me, you know what I mean? And it's like, but I feel like I've done a pretty good job in my life. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like I do a pretty good job with my kids. Like, that whole thing happened. What did we do on Sunday? We sat down and we talked about race. We had discussions about it, and I'm teaching my kids in the house the second that it happened. So it's like, I feel like I'm doing a good job. So when that kind of stuff happens, I think some people get defensive, and they have to almost try to justify what they have done not to be that way, but that's not enough. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I think you do have to start to take a stand with stuff. Have you been surprised by actions on what's happened with, are you surprised at what is happening in the nation right now with the momentum of everything that's going on? Are you surprised by that?
Well, the way that I've kind of made sense of it is, we've been on lockdown, we've been quarantined. People are looking at social media, and so more people's eyes are on the issue. And because of that, it's people are seeing that, whoa, it happened again. Oh my gosh, it keeps happening. It's been happening. Like I said, it's been happening. And so, but still, I am surprised. I'm pleasantly surprised by the reaction and by the conversations that people want to have. They're like, I don't want to sound ignorant. And they're scared. People are scared to even have the conversation. But it's just having that humility to say, you know what, this isn't right. How can I be better? How can I make things better? What can I do for you? And I've seen that change, and I've felt it, and I appreciate it. And I hope that more people want to do that.
What about you, Tim?
Yeah, am I shocked? Am I surprised by the reaction? No, not anymore. I think it was coming. You know what I mean? I think it was something that you could see potentially happening. And then with social media, again, that's our platform now. It's everybody's platform, and it's worldwide, right? So now you see protests outside of the United States of America. So there's now, again, because everything is like Yahosh was saying earlier, now that we have cameras and all this stuff, like, it's only a matter of time. And I think that there are starting to, and especially with the climate politically and just all these different things.
It's kind of like the perfect storm, right?
Exactly.
It's all coming together.
Exactly. And now we got the pandemic, and now and it's amazing too. Even with that, like all these protests the protests are violating social distancing.
Seriously. I thought that too.
Like, you think about it and you're just like, oh, that's interesting, and that's as far as I go. I promise. Like, that's super interesting. But a
good word, interesting.
Interesting. It's a safe word. Yeah, I've learned that in my space of work. That's interesting. What does that sound like? That's interesting. But no, I'm not shocked. I am hopeful some days and some days not. Yeah. That we'll continue the conversation long enough that we'll actually see real change. Like, I'm hopeful of that, but there are certain days where I read what people have to say, and I'm like, well, maybe not. Maybe this will be another. Maybe it'll get really stoked about it, and then something else will happen that'll distract us, and we won't. You know what I mean?
What are those things that you're hoping for, like change?
I'm hoping that the conversation will continue. So, like, days like this, they make me extremely hopeful. That's why I haven't said no to an opportunity to speak to anyone, to come on anybody's deal, come on this podcast. I've had friends reach out to me. I've had pastors, and I'm not no pastor, but I've had pastors reach out to me and want to have conversations, and I'm not passing on any of those because people genuinely want to know. And I think with our platforms, we have to continue to encourage conversation. And I'm seeing that more and more. I'm seeing that being encouraged.
Do you think more than normal? Like, more
absolutely.
When this happens? Like, because obviously, like you say, like, this happened. I mean, the first one I can remember, like, I lived in LA still during Rodney King, like that whole thing. And do you see more happening this time positive?
Absolutely. I'm seeing more happen positive, and I'm also seeing what I feel like to be a huge change, and that is the white community is actually standing up. Whereas, we had the Million Man March back in, I don't know, and that was not even for this. That was for, like, like black on black crime and in infested neighborhoods like that. But I'm actually seeing people trying to empathize that don't look like me. I'm seeing now, I'm going to say this, and if you watch my live, I'm also seeing a little bit of my white brothers and sisters not doing us any favors.
That's something I want to talk about.
And we can get, I don't know if we're there yet, But did I make us there? I don't.
Let's jump. Let's go.
For sure.
Okay.
Let's go.
They are doing things in the name of the movement that the people who are like in the movement aren't doing, and in the name of trying to help. And I don't know if they're trying to help because I don't want to judge anybody's heart, but I will tell you, you're not helping. If you're downtown, especially in Utah, if you're downtown and you're flipping and burning police cars, not helping us. If you're downtown and you're climbing up on buildings and spray painting Black Lives Matter,
On Starbucks.
not helping us.
That would,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
If you're downtown causing commotion and you're in a peaceful protest, but yet you're not being peaceful, you're not helping us because we saw with the guy with the bow and arrow. I don't know if you guys saw that. Right?
Oh,
So
man.
we saw the opportunity that one will take to make sure that it's still the black face that did something bad to you. Where when we look at the video, it was nothing but white guys that jumped him.
For real.
Right? But his first thing, and they will still put a mic to his mouth, and he will still say, it was African Americans that jumped me. And so I want us to be careful that as you're trying to help, don't hurt us at the same time. And I say that in all love, and I'm not upset at anybody because I think people are trying to figure out how to process it. And you got young kids and they're radicals and they're wanting to really get out there. And it's like, yo, look at your black friend and take the lead from him. If he's not burning things up, if he's not disrespectfully talking to somebody, now obviously you're going to get your odd ones in the bunch or whatever. So I'm not saying that you don't have that as an example, but look right next to you and figure out, okay, all right, I'm going to take it's the same thing I would do. If I was in a company of people that I was trying to help out, I would, I say this about funerals. Black funerals always make me laugh and this is the only analogy I have. But like, there's like the person who's deceased, right? And then you have like their immediate family, right? And their immediate family is just chill. Like they're grieving and they're crying, but they're just chill. But then you get this one odd person who like
this estranged aunt.
It's like this random person who we haven't seen in 10 years that will come in the door and just start screaming and going crazy and want to jump in the casket with the dead. And it's like, yo, my G, take your cue from me. That was my brother or my son. I'm not jumping around. And so that's kind of the analogy I think of. Like, yo, chill
We just
out.
want the attention.
Yeah, I just want some attention. And really you end up hurting us. So
That's the thing. You're taking someone else's cause and making it about
flipping it.
you, right?
Yeah.
And hurting it in the process.
And people are waiting for the cause to be hurt. People that haven't spoken up, people who hide their head in the sand, they're like, see? See?
Everyone finds what they're looking for, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so don't help us.
Absolutely.
And that's a good point. And I think that sometimes I guess the way that I look at it is I think there's some people, especially maybe here, right, where there's not a lot of diversity, we've said before, that they really take their cues from what they're seeing on TV, whether it be pop culture, whether it be the one news channel they watch just showing looting, right? There might be like one area where it's getting looted, but they're not talking about the 2,000 peaceful protests. But at the same time, we can't blame them for that. That's where the education comes in, right? Because they don't really have anything else to see. They don't have any black friends. There's no black people in their neighborhood. Geez, in Utah, it could be no black people in their county, right? And to me, that's when I bring up education, I think like I grew up in an area where like I was not the majority race, right? I mean, I'm in California. So just like you said, like it's just about being nice to other human beings because there was everything that you didn't even have to think about it. But here it's different because it's this kind of bubble and I don't know that people know how to act.
Well, the thing that I've been saddened by is people have been more outraged here about the looting
Right.
than the death.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're like,
Well, to your point, that's maybe what they're looking for, right?
Sure.
Or maybe that's how, because I haven't thought about the burying my head, like what you said about the blackout thing, like this is really like, that's sunk in. And maybe that's how people justify burying their head in the sand, right?
well, it is for sure because they find what they're looking for. And so they say, see, that's why this whole thing can't, you know what I mean? Like he must have been doing something wrong. Look at the reaction of stuff. Right. And like I said, it's been disheartening as I have tried to open my eyes a little bit more and see what's going on around me. And you see that they are more outraged with that than they are the death and the persecution. You know what I mean? It's like, I know that hit a nerve because when I said that, both of you guys were just like, oh, like, you know, you can tell that hits differently for you guys, right?
Yeah.
How does that make you feel when you see people that are starting to be vocal, but they're more vocal about the looting than they are about the racism?
You know, I try to have conversations, you know, when I can, because this whole everything. This is good that these conversations are happening, but you know, it's emotionally draining. You know, and the people that you love deeply, you're figuring out they don't love you like you love them, and all of them, you know, because they're focusing and making general statements about, you know, people of color. And for me, I just try to see, okay, I ask, why are you focusing on this? Why is this your focus? You know, and just see where they're coming from or why they said what they said. And after a conversation, then I can make my, you know, I guess my judgment, and okay, I can help sway them. I can help give them more of a perspective, or okay, well, hopefully you'll get it at some point, you know?
Yeah.
But it's unfortunate that they're so adamant about voicing their opinion on this side, not the death, not the murder that's been happening for hundreds of years, but on the items being stolen, that they care more about the crime of people's property and being taken rather than a person's life being taken. So it just says a lot about what they're thinking, or what they're looking for, and what kind of media and conversations they're engaging in, you know.
Like, yeah, what their intake is, right? On what they're consuming.
And again, I try not to judge, but that's why I ask questions, you know, and then I make my assumption.
Yeah. What about you, Tim?
You said you sorry. You said you recognized that you hit a nerve. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did. Yahosh is better than me. No, you really are.
Tell him how you feel, because I probably feel the same way.
No, I have lived most of my life, so to this point, not judging. I just don't do it. I don't do it when it comes to church. I don't do it when it comes to leaders. I don't do it when it comes, because I know we all have our day and our moments of low points or failure or whatever you want to call it. I don't judge. And I don't think that I'm judging the people who are saying, who care more about the riots than they do about the dead guy, right? Or about the that was brought to my attention. It's not a murder until he's convicted. Which is another insensitive thing to say.
So it's not really a judgment. You're telling me.
Yeah, you're just
seriously.
Yeah. Like I heard that today.
That's crazy.
I just came from a very, very tough meeting.
Yeah.
On my way here, before I came here, I was in a very, very tough meeting with some people I loved dearly, and they did not offend me at all. But we were just talking, and you know, I work at a school, so without saying too much, it was a hard meeting. But statements like that, statements like, you know, caring about property and not, and you're only mentioning, like, your first mention of George Floyd is after the looting.
Oh my gosh. Yes. You look on people's timelines and stuff.
So when people say that, I go to first mention. So I'm like, oh, okay, wait a minute. All right. I see something about the riots. I think the riots are wrong too. Mm-hmm. Let's scroll up and see what you've said before. Cause then I don't have to judge you. I get the information. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's where you are. So I'm very, I work with people, and I'm in contact, in close proximity with people who are the people that we're talking about. And at this moment, and they asked me today, because I was just sitting there, and they asked, Tim, how are you feeling? And it's just me. I'm the only black face in the room with 5 other white people, and they're great. Again, like I don't even say that just because I'm on here. Amazing people who are learning and who are empathizing and but they asked me how I'm feeling. I just told them, I'm just angry. I'm just angry. Those things anger me, because you're making a choice to only see what you want to see. And I feel like you're seeing the wrong thing. And yeah, and I can go on. I don't want to keep talking for long periods of time, but yeah.
Why do you think, and this is, I guess, an unfair question of you, maybe it's a question I should be asking us, but like, why is it that we are looking for something else? You know what I mean? Like, why is it that we have to have a reason or a justification for what happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think some people don't want to believe that humans are capable of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it is always just a racist thing. I think maybe it's a human nature thing. It's hard. Some people really struggle with the fact that it's not racist. Like, humans couldn't do that. Like, there had to be a reason. It's like, maybe, I think the world is such a dark place right now that I think people want to like put just a warm blanket over everything. And, obviously it's denial, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's naive. But I think people, like, mental health, I feel like is worse than it has been in a long, long time. And I think that also hurts having good conversation or good dialogue about it, because people just can't handle it right now. I think social media has made people a lot weaker than they used to be. We judge ourselves against everything. It's like
They're scared to be attacked.
So that's a huge thing.
I've had people inbox me a lot. I'm like, oh
Right.
man, hey, I'm thinking about you, praying for you, love you. What's happening is wrong, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wow, thank you so much. And then I go to their Facebook and they've said nothing
But let me give
because
you
they are scared of being attacked.
Yes, let me give you an alternative opinion to that. This is how I feed my family, right? We live in a boycott, cancel society. And it's hard because if you take a side, it could cost you, like, and it doesn't matter what side. Like, you're almost, but I see it with a lot of athletes now too. Like, they don't want to stir the pot because it can cost, right? And I've seen it a lot. Like, if a business owner makes a decision and he's in an area, or man, I think there's a lot of people that have done it without even knowing it, and all of a sudden they struck a nerve and they're gone. Like, they lose it all. I think that might be why some business owners have a hard time with the looting. I don't think they don't care about what's going on. Obviously it's different if they're talking about the looting and not the other thing. That's a totally different thing.
Yep.
But I mean, there are people losing everything and just for saying the wrong thing or being in the wrong place. Like, I feel like they deserve some empathy too, I guess. And I don't know. I think for me, the looting thing for me is hard. I would never, like, you guys make a really interesting point about that. If you're only posting about the looting and you're not talking about the murder that happened, that's a problem. But I do think a lot of people are scared to stand up because nowadays your whole livelihood, everything you do to take care of your family, everything you've built can go away like that. And that's hurting the discourse.
Yeah.
It's definitely hurting the discourse. Absolutely. Because, I mean, black people have been saying it
For
for
sure.
100 years. We're being killed. Stop killing us. Give us not even equality, just civil rights. We want to exist. We want to feel safe. Can I go for a walk? I went for a walk last week, and it was late, and it was nice outside. I was like, Vanessa, I'm gonna go for a walk. I'm gonna. She's like, no, don't go. And I was like, no, I should be able to go for a walk. I'm gonna go for a walk. I get down the street. I get a call from my brother. Hey, how you doing, brother? Please go home, man. Please go home. Your wife just called me. It's like, I should be able to feel free to walk in my own neighborhood without even in the back of my head.
Where do you live?
Spanish Fork.
Holy hell.
Spanish Fork. I should be able to feel free to do that.
Yeah. And now one would say, Yahosh, come on. Not in Spanish Fork, Utah. Right? Like that would be, so somebody's gonna listen to this and be like, oh, you're stretching it. It's Spanish Fork, Utah. You know what I mean? And so that kills it. That hurts it. Mm-hmm. That hurts the conversation because people think, like you said, that humans are incapable of being like this when you keep seeing it over and over and over again. And who would have thought Minneapolis and Minnesota? Anybody? Everybody thinking, like, nobody would have thought that. I wouldn't have thought that based on what I know about the city. I don't think, you know what I'm saying? And then to your point about empathy for people who are afraid to lose things. And I was in my conversation with a guy last week who's a very close friend of mine. When he asked me, and I didn't give him something super hard to do necessarily, right? I was just like, hey, what do you think is right? He's like, I think this is right. I said, well, say something. And his response was, was it's hard. And I was like, well, I know. So is being black.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, what are you talking about? Like, so is being a black male in rural Utah that I experienced in 2018. That, I mean,
I was going to ask you about that. Is
Yeah.
it Taviona we're talking about?
well, I wasn't going to name any names or anything like that.
Let's name some names.
since we're here, but like if I empathize with having to do the hard thing, but only to a certain extent. It's like, do something hard. Rosa Parks did something hard. Martin Luther King did something hard, and he was assassinated. Like, you look at, I mean, yeah, there are some Jesus Christ did it right for 33 and a half years, and he was crucified. So even those of us who are of, religious or have relationship with Christ, like, yeah, it's going to cost us something to do the right thing. At the end of the day, it's going to cost, and you got to be willing to say, you know what? Is it worth that? Or maybe I got to position myself to have something of my own so that when I do speak up and somebody decides they're going to take something of mine, that I got something to fall back on, because that's what we've had to do. Like, if
So what is that hard thing? Like, you said you asked your friend to do something that
he
was
asked
hard,
me,
but not that hard, right?
Yeah.
But
So they have a platform, a solid platform, and they have friends that think differently than they do. And so the hard thing was to publicly say something, because that's what they want to do. That's why they met with me in the first place, because they want to publicly say something. How do I do that? Well, I don't really have a sweet formula for you that's going to make it all pretty for you. You just got to do it, right? You got to say it. And then it's, well, I'm afraid what I'll lose. I said, I get it. But that's where the tough thing comes. That's where the hard decision comes. That's what people are facing today. I'm not asking you to go march or go down to the rally, or I'm not asking you to do any of those things. You're telling me you want to, and right now, not picking a side is picking a side.
It's so true.
You're very right. And that's something that, it's funny. I always just look at like social media as, I don't want people to think I'm just doing this to be just for social media. And I think that's where, because obviously I'm talking about it right here. Yeah. Obviously I want to talk about it. I want to take a stand.
Yeah.
But I do need to understand, like, I've learned a whole lot already on especially how I perceive things and what I can do to help, and that it does matter. It does matter, like a post, because that's the whole thing, right? I want to help my black brothers and friends out. And here I am thinking that it's going to be lame if I just post something on social media. Like, what's that going to do? But it sounds like it would mean a lot, right?
Yeah. Well, people expect to hear our voices. They expect for us to say something. And we've been saying, like I said, forever. But to hear it from you, to hear it from somebody that is white, that doesn't look like us, that's not from where most black people are from, that don't share our experiences, but can empathize, to hear it from you guys, that's what's bringing the change. Mm-hmm. There's change that's happening, and it needs to keep going, but it's not going to keep pushing forward if it's just our voices. It needs to be the voices of our friends.
And it's creating, this is another thing that I think it'll, if we really do this right, we'll get back to where we weren't where we're not so sensitive anymore. We'll get back to the point where we can look each other in the eye and say the things that we need to say without feeling like I'm going to offend or I'm going to do this or that. Like, what it's really going to do, I feel like, is not just create cross-cultural or cross-ethnic conversations. It's going to create conversations amongst white people who view life a little bit different than each other and didn't know it, because we can just always be white and that's
right.
You know what I mean? So now your friends are calling you, hey man, I saw your post. I thought, or tell me more about that. Tell me how you came to that conclusion. Tell me how you came to the courage of saying something out loud. And you can say, hey man, look, I had a few conversations. I was intentional about it. And let's talk about how we were both raised and where it went wrong and where it went sideways and what have we done to indirectly teach that, the world is a certain way. And this is, you know what I mean? Like,
I loved it. Tell me how you got to that conclusion.
Tell me how you got there.
Like, everyone's thought it through, right? But we don't let people talk about that. We just look at what they've done and make an assumption on how they got there. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing for me that's been disappointing in me as a person is, like I said, I've tried to live my life the best that I can, right? And one thing that's been hard for me to swallow, if I'm being honest, is systemic racism. You had it right at the beginning, like if every white person is racist, right? You said that. And at first it was like, no, I'm not. Let's go. You know what? Like,
you should have said that. That would have been fun.
Like the walls come up and I'm like, no, I'm not. The system is not, but it's like, that is, and this is me being defensive. That is white privilege. I hate the term. And that's, I think it's okay for me to say I hate the term, but I can understand it now because it's my choice to have this conversation. It is not your choice to have this conversation. To your point, I can choose whether or not I'm going to have it. I can choose if I'm going to get involved. I can choose if I'm going to say anything, because if I don't, nothing really happens.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You can choose that and it not change your reality.
Correct.
Your reality stays the same.
Correct.
If you don't want to talk to Yahosh and Tim, it's no skin off your back.
Yep.
But if we don't have this conversation, if you don't open that up to us,
well, you live it.
Yeah, then we can't. Yeah,
right? Like that.
Absolutely.
That's been the hardest thing for me. And like with Lena, our niece, coming in, hearing her say that, like I asked her what her first response was when everything happened, and she's like, I was scared.
Yeah.
Am I going to be next? Is what she said.
That is terrifying. And it's embarrassing that I never thought about it, but how grateful I am that I have thought about it now, and I am willing to have these types of conversations, right? And to be able to talk about the fact that, yeah, we are at an advantage because of the color of our skin. I've never once had to worry about being pulled over for not doing something wrong, right? I never have. And like, I asked her this, I kind of want to talk about, I don't know if this is the right time, but like my background, like sports has been awesome for me. I played basketball, you know what I mean? So obviously I'm going to play against a lot of black guys because that's part of the sport, right? And I remember the first All-Star game I went to, it was in the Midwest somewhere, and it was a whole bunch of black guys, and I'm just this white kid from Utah. And at first it was really intimidating. I'm like, oh, these guys must be really good. Like, look at them, right? But for me, what was awesome is like, we beat them. It's like, I got these guys. Like, they are no different. They look different than me, but it's like, for me, that was awesome because it put me on equal ground. I was no longer scared or nervous. It was like, do you know what? I'm better than them. Not from a superiority, but from a skill point in basketball. I was like, I can take these guys, and then I did the summer sales things for 5 years. Did it in Chicago and Detroit and Newark, New Jersey and Gary, Indiana. And one of my favorite things to do is to go to the neighborhoods when they were playing hoop and to show up and start challenging guys to play ball. It was so much fun, but it was like, I was able to view things differently. Where I'm going with this, I don't know where I'm going with that, but that's kind of,
you're saying so much, and I love it because that's something that, I mean, when your children come up and they start playing and they're playing against people of different backgrounds, hey, they're just basketball players, just like you. That's something you can teach them and strength that they can get from that. For me, I mean, Tim was an athletic director before me, and I called him before I even applied to be an athletic director, because what other African-American athletic directors are there in this state? And that's a pretty sweet opportunity, but I was just like, man, I don't know if I could do
at
it.
a very
I see
white
him doing
school.
it. I see him doing it, and I'm like, man, that like encourages me, like to see him doing it. And he talked to me, no, man, you'd be great. You can do it. I'm just like, why did I think I wouldn't be good enough? Why in my mind was I like, I couldn't be an athletic director, but to see my brother do it and then tell me, yeah, you deserve that job. Go get it. You're going to kill it. I mean, whoa. Just like how you felt like I could take these guys. I'm just as good as these guys. And that gave me that ability. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen with all the black community. Systemic racism, 400 years of being told that you're nothing, you're less than a human. And then another 50 years of laws saying that you can't do this, you can't eat here, you can't drink. That thing's it trickles down. We're making moves, and we're getting better, but there's still a result of what our history has been here in America, Love you, Tim. Love you, man.
It really, honestly, it humbles me to hear you say that, but it also makes me sad at the same time.
Yeah.
That we have to we have to pump ourselves up
Yeah, overcome that doubt.
in order to feel like we can
Right.
do it. You know, like I remember my mom, man, and she's amazing. My parents are amazing, but she was always tell us, no matter where you go, you're just as good as whoever you know what I'm saying? Like, but like, it's possible, and I'm not, maybe it's a stretch. Your mom probably didn't feel like she needed to tell you that. Maybe when you was going to play against all the black kids in basketball. But other than that, like, just to approach the world, that's not the common theme that I feel like happens all the way around. Like our parents have to push us to tell us that, hey, you can be great. You're just as good as everybody else. Why? Because systematically we've been taught that we're not.
And I think that's something that we have to admit exists.
Yeah.
Like that is something that I think is buried. We bury our hands in the sand and we say, oh, that doesn't exist because there is no rate. There's no slavery today, right? That doesn't exist today. Like Tim,
the mentality.
like Tim, you weren't a slave. So how are you going to talk about all this stuff?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And going back, like I read something that talked about taking like being guilty or being responsible. And it was interesting for me because it was like, I am not guilty of the things that my ancestors did. That had nothing to do with me. But I need to take responsibility for what happened and help change that.
Oh.
And
What do you mean take responsibility?
I have to own that our system is
Acknowledge
racist. I have to admit that there is an advantage. I have an advantage
100%.
over Tim and Yahosh. I have to admit that.
And then being intentional about
And it's hard,
a change.
honest, it's hard to admit that because it makes me feel dirty. It makes me feel like, oh, I did something wrong, but I don't have to. Like I can admit that there's a problem without feeling guilty of it, right? And then I have to do something about it to try and make a change, to do something different.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
No, for sure. And I'm actually glad that he asked you the question. Like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? Because I think it's important to communicate. And you're not guilty of anything. You didn't do anything to me, you know. And for a long time, honestly, that was my stance because I've overcome so much that overcoming is actually just a way of life. You know what I mean? Like the way you approach your everyday life, like that's overcoming. I don't even think about it. It's just a natural thing because I overcome, right? But at the end of the day, there's a mentality that Yahosh was talking about that is, so we're not necessarily slaves, but that slave mentality has been passed down. So
you're right.
That's the part that you're responsible for. You're responsible to help me be a little bit more mentally well. You know what I mean? To create atmospheres like this
and opportunities
that say, hey, nah, dude, nah, you're just as good.
Well, then I read something else from a good friend, Rajiv Patel.
Yeah.
Did you read his post on Facebook? So we talked about equality and equity. That's how he framed it. And he talked about it was a picture. I'll show you the picture of it.
I seen that one. Yeah.
You know Rajiv?
No, but I've seen that picture.
He's one
I
of
know
Trey's,
what
So
you
he's one
that
of
one right
Trey's
there.
buddies.
So he talks about equality as we're going to give everyone. So the picture is three guys watching a baseball game,
Yeah.
different heights, tall, medium, and small,
Oh,
right?
that picture
over a
is-
fence.
Watching it over a fence. And equality was everyone got the same box, but they
Whoa.
had the exact same problem because the tallest could see, the middle could barely, and the smallest couldn't.
Wow.
Equity was
Wow.
give 2 boxes to the smaller one so he could see. The taller one doesn't need a box because he doesn't need to. He can already see and give you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That struck me because going back to, it's not necessarily we're falling for equality. It's equity. You guys have talked about it so much, and going back to the way I try to learn, and it's the only way I know how to learn, is to put it in terms that I have either experienced or I can relate with, right? And it's not fair to talk about how I can relate to racism. I can't. I never will be able to. And I read something says like someone who's been to war, I can't relate to being in combat. Like I just can't. But what I can relate like this to is if I'm a parent to 4 kids, we're all parents in this room. Each kid has specific needs, right? And if one child really struggles with reading and one child is fabulous at reading, if I spend the exact same time with them, I am not giving my child who struggles the best chance to get ahead. I have to spend more time with that person.
I love it.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is what's happening in our world today with race. It's not enough to be equal. Let's acknowledge where there is a shortcoming. Let's acknowledge that there is a difference between my first son and my second son, and let's help both succeed. And I think we all have this scarcity mindset where it's either or it's all or nothing. And that's the wrong way to look at it. Like, just because I'm helping one person more does not take away from this. Just because I love and I spend extra time with my son playing hoop because he likes to hoop does not take away from my love for my daughter because I don't spend time playing basketball with her. Like, it does not all need to be equal. And I think we all fall into this trap of, if I do something here, I need to do something here. And that's not what this is about. It's not about equal effort. I feel like it's about like achieving a result, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think a lot of people here in Utah, especially, if you don't grow up in a place like where you grew up, Tim, or like where I grew up, right? Or work in Chicago like we did for so many years, you don't realize just how big of a disadvantage it is, right? There's skin color, and that's something that maybe people can compute in their minds, right? But if you don't spend any time in a place like that, like, I think people here only have kind of what they see maybe on TV or maybe pop culture. They don't realize, like, that picture is, it's incredible. Like,
such
a great way to look at it, because I'm sorry, if you were born in Southside Chicago, you deserve a lot more help than I do. Mm-hmm. A lot more help. So it's not just about making the playing field even, right? Like, you have the same access to grants that I do. Like, we all have the same access.
But we all don't have the know-how.
That's not true.
But yes, that's the response, though.
Yeah.
You don't
can do it
have
just like
the help.
I can do it.
That's not true.
It's not.
Right. They don't have the funding.
Yeah.
They don't have the support.
Yeah.
And that's always something that I've kind of thought of is, I love that talk by one of our church leaders, Dieter Uchtdorf, Lift Where You Stand, right?
Oh, it's so good.
But I also feel like I kind of want to go back to Chicago and help there, because Chicago was good to me. Like, I worked hard there and I had a great job, and I love that place. Like, I love the people there, and I may not live there, but what can I do to help there? So I think people here need to hear this, because, and I'm guilty of it too, in the sense that I think it, like when you were telling the story about playing ball in Vegas, was it Vegas or Midwest? Like,
Midwest, yeah.
You said earlier, like, we're just all like, we just treat people with respect. Like, we're all human beings. Like, if I show up to play basketball with a bunch of black dudes, like, I wouldn't even think about it. Like, what? There's just people here.
Yeah.
But I grew up somewhere different. Like, so that is something that needs to be overcome. And I think in Utah, that's where this conversation can be really helpful, because to hear, I feel like people here are just getting the narrative, right, of whatever they're listening to. Mm-hmm. And most of it, unfortunately, is mainstream media. They don't get to hear from, like, real people, real struggles, and they're here at home. Yeah. And to hear some of the things that you've said really opens our eyes to how much more we have to do. And I think a lot of people justify how they're feeling or what they're doing by the equality thing, that picture that you just showed us. Like, look, they've got the same advantages that are not advantages. They have the same opportunities that we do. Because, look, everyone has the same box. Uh-huh. It's the same height. But, wow, I've never thought of it in that. Like, we are visual learners. Like, that was a powerful thing. Because Yahosh, you talking about going out on a walk. Yahosh, like, one of the happiest, nicest, friendliest freaking people I've ever met in my life.
And
I'd come out and give you a hug if you were walking to me.
And the most popular black guy in Utah.
Stop.
Holy moly.
No, but for real, hold on. That's a joke. but a very recognizable person
Absolutely.
that is still nervous.
1000%.
That still has to
Crazy.
think about it.
1000%.
Like you joked about it, but like the fact that of anyone, if you really thought about that it makes me sick. It really does. And it's like,
Yeah.
like I don't know, but it comes back to something that, as we talked about this, like the parable of the talents, right? Some are given more and they have to do more with them,
Yeah.
right?
You have more responsibility.
And so where much is given, more is required. And I think that's the weight that I have been feeling. That's why I feel like this is a great step, is to have like a conversation and to be able to open this up in this kind of format, right?
I feel the same way, interestingly enough, because I know why you're saying you have more given, more required, right? I feel the same exact way. Like, I was given a lot.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Even as being a black guy, right? So
for sure.
the requirement for me
From Compton.
right? The requirement for me is going to be different than the person who's still kind of stuck like in inner city LA or inner city anywhere, or having a bad economic situation. Like, because their speaking out is going to sound different than my speaking out. We're both speaking out, but I've been given much more. I've been connected in other spaces where now, like, I can't become a part of the culture that accepted me and not say anything for the people that look like me. You know what I'm saying? In order to advance them as well.
Yeah.
Because that's another issue that I feel like, you know, again,
That's a heavy burden, man.
it is. You know what? And
It's a burden. It's a privilege.
It's a privilege,
Right.
Yeah.
And it is a burden. It's absolutely heavy, but it is absolutely a privilege. And I believe more than anything, even back to what we were saying before, like, I'm learning the things that I was born for. Like, I'm continually learning why I thought when I was young, I was born to hoop.
Yeah.
And I did it good. I did it very well. But then I learned, I was born to be a music guy. And it's like, well, no, you were given all of these things in order to open up a platform to do what you really been born for, and that is to help humanity progress, right?
And everything had its stage. Everything had its time, right?
Absolutely.
Like there was a time to hoop. There was a time to do this.
And I couldn't suck at hoop.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't suck at being a basketball player if I wanted to be a good musician, because being a good basketball player brought me to Utah. And if I was in LA, I would not be a musician because I'm turned off by LA musicians. So now I'm in a space where, you know, I want to be a good musician, because just being a token black guy who can kind of do things well in Utah, that gets you to a certain point. So now I want to excel at that so that my platform grows and the message that I have reaches more people. You know, so for me, like, I have the same response. I feel like back to that, more known or more given, more required, or more, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we bear the burden, but God knows that I'm capable of carrying that with His help, right? He doesn't give me that without Him helping me carry it.
What's the scripture in Corinthians, right? He'll never give you more than you're able to handle. You know what I mean? Like, we've been given these opportunities and can find strength in doing it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, something.
Well, you helped Yahosh too, which I think that's a really cool.
When
That's
I hear
big
stuff like
props,
that,
man.
it's really hard not to be emotional about that, because
It's
you
a
don't really
beautiful
know,
thing.
because people don't tell you.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? You like, guys, especially guys. Guys not about to tell you, hey man, you were one of the guys that really made me believe I can do it. Do you know what that can mean for somebody's life?
Oh man, gratitude is such a big deal. Like, and sharing that, like that
Just the fact that he would say that,
for
it really, it means a lot, man.
Yeah, it meant
I mean
a lot to me.
I mean
it means a lot. Thank you.
I really do.
the moment right there. And I'm not being funny. Like that's just teaching us how to be a good. To me, that is bigger than even race, right? Like, we do need to share with each other. Like, we do need to be grateful and tell people how we feel, and tell people, you know, it's funny. So I'm pretty open about marriage counseling. Like, we went this morning, and he was talking about how happiness is actually false. Like, it's not real. Like, you can't quantify it. He was talking about the psychologist, and it's more about like well-being and some of the things you can do to increase your well-being. And gratitude was number one. Like, a gratitude journal, like, you write 3 things every day, but you write the story behind it. Like, why are you grateful? What made you think of it today? And then it also said, pick a person, what do you say, once a month, and write a 3 to 500 word letter to that person on why you're grateful for them, but you go read it to them.
Woo. Wow.
Right? Like,
Giving out all this guy's secrets, man.
I'm like, who is this counselor?
I'm just saying, like, how good did that make you feel when he shared that? Right?
Yeah.
And I mean,
Absolutely.
how good, I'm sure that feels good too, to be able to say thank you. And that,
Yeah.
man,
I see life differently in that regard. A few years back, my brother had to bury his 13-year-old son who was killed in a car accident. And I remember, and it was just months before it happened, we were at church, and he was super talented, dance, sing, just gifted, but had some self-worth issues. And I remember sitting on the stairs with him because, you know, one of the responsible adults kind of led me on to believe that he was struggling with some stuff. And we talked, and it was amazing to hear his perspective of what he thought people thought about him. And then in his death, we had a concert on Friday that was standing room only. Like, all these people who were impacted by his life and who loved him dearly, right? Saturday, we have his celebration of life. Same deal. I mean, his services together, probably a few thousand people.
13 years old?
13 years old. Wow. And he never knew what these people thought about him. And it pissed me off, to be honest with you. And every opportunity I get to share with kids, especially dudes, because we got like this strong thing where we don't say anything to each other. We don't really build each other up, right? Like, that's the thing that I'm reminded about the most when it comes to gratitude. Like, tell people how you feel while they are here, because you have no idea what they really think that you think about them. I told my family, I don't want a funeral. You better tell me now. I don't want no speaker. I don't want no talks. I don't want none of that. Don't give it to, either give it to me now or shut up. That's kind of where I'm, you know what I mean? Like, I know that's probably like too much, but to me, like, I feel like we need to know these things. We gotta know. So anyway, you guys keep talking and you keep bringing things up in my head. So
I love how you think. Like, I feel like we think a lot alike in
I told you
in that
good.
regard. Yeah, it was our spark, man. I knew it. I knew it. but you're right. Like, why wait?
Yeah.
Like, why are we waiting? Like, if you feel something, share it.
Yeah.
And man, where you guys have such a cool opportunity working with younger kids, right? To share that. Not to mention, like, how much can you help white people understand how to help and how to support and have somebody to look up to personally connected, not just an athlete, not just but a real friend. Because like you said, Yahosh, like, the shows you watch, like the people you interact with, go, like, seek those relationships out, find a connection. So both your burdens are heavy in that regard. Like, you do have a real special opportunity to kind of bridge that gap. Like, and we need to help more, obviously. I know I need to do more, especially with what I've learned today. But I don't know that I'll ever be able to do as much as you two have the opportunity to do here.
And I don't think we'll ever be able to do as much as you two have the opportunity to do in your community too.
Well, I appreciate that. I feel blessed to have some really cool connection. I mean, you're one of them, Yahosh. I've known you a while. Like, but again, I've never really thought of it as you're Yahosh, right? But to hear you say, like, that you're looking, like, I want to see my friends speaking up, like, that's,
Even if it's little.
yeah,
Right. By
like,
small and simple
who
things or great
cares?
things brought to pass.
I guess me worrying about it just looking fake and for social media, like you said, who gives a damn? Like, it's something, and I need to speak up. Like this right here.
This is great.
Like, this was Andrew's idea. I am mad that you thought that I might not want to do it. He said that.
I was nervous about.
I can understand why he wouldn't want to do it for the same reasons you talked about earlier.
Well, but
nobody wants their business shut
well,
down.
and that's the thing. Like, I wouldn't have thought. I'm not.
Get your meals while you can.
Listen, barbecue doesn't exist without my black family, right? So that would be pretty hypocritical of me to worry about that. But maybe that's what you meant by it, was just, the business side.
Well,
of
it's just
things,
something like
which
I felt the
but-
call to it, but I'm not going to force that on anyone else, right?
For sure. And
I felt the call that this was an opportunity,
dude, and that's what this is all about.
that I
right?
wanted to take.
We want to lift. Like, that's why we talk to people that have died multiple times with drugs. Like, we want to talk about hard things because I feel like a lot of people do bury their heads in the sand. Mm-hmm. But it's also important for us to know what more we can do, because I think here, maybe it is burying their heads in the sand, but I also think that people just don't know what to do. They don't know how to help because maybe they don't have a friend.
Yep.
Maybe they don't have a connection with somebody from a different race, and not by any fault or intent.
Yeah.
They just live in Tabiona, Utah, which we should talk about that. But oh man, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, but I mean, I think it's important to empathize there. I think that it can be easy to just say, like, they're just ignorant. And maybe it's that, and maybe that, like what you guys just said, that we can help a lot. That is definitely where we can help a lot.
Well, I mean,
They'll listen, they will listen to us. Maybe easier than they'll listen to you if they don't know you.
Or they'll be comfortable telling you rather than listening. They'll be comfortable
That's
talking.
also a very good point.
Most people don't know, when they say they don't know what to do, they mean they don't know what to say to us or concerning us. They have figured out you guys have figured out what to say amongst each other, right. And now it's a safe place to have those conversations. But yeah, the ignorance thing that's an interesting thing too, with the whole youth, the place you keep mentioning that I haven't said one time. I'm going on record. I have some media training.
Hey, but see, that's the same thing, right? Like, you're scared to lose something or get in trouble.
I'm not. No, heck no.
What is it
different.
then?
I'm just being a good dude right now. I'm being a very cynical and sarcastic good dude. I can absolutely say.
Okay, good.
I can actually get into real names,
and that was so helpful. For you to come out and the voice, hey, this is what happened. This isn't right.
For sure.
For you to stand. I mean, that helped so many people and to be aware of, whoa, this is still happening in my state.
Right.
And because of that experience, you've made it better for other athletes.
Can we talk about it?
Yeah, let's go.
I mean, I've had experiences I'm sure you've had experience when you were even a player.
Yeah. I think we do need to, before we're done, I think it's important for people to hear what's
happening.
A black man deals with in Utah. Yeah. Like what they hear, what they see, like everyday thing, like your story about walking in your neighborhood, Yahosh. Like, I don't think people realize, like, you have never had to think about walking in your neighborhood if you're a white dude.
I've never once thought about that when I go for a walk.
And that's we need to hear that. Like, that's
and I love my neighborhood and I love the people
Right.
in it, but I don't know everybody in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
I don't know
Right.
everybody.
Well, and I mean, just with Lena, where they're talking about it, like 16-year-old girl getting, all sorts of racial slurs being thrown at her all the time. And we have another aunt and uncle. They have a couple of black girls that are playing soccer against Alta, right? And they had parents and fans screaming the N-word at these little girls playing soccer, and no one did anything. You have cops up there in the stands, and you have all of these parents. And that right there is the problem. Like, as hard as it is, I feel like, well, you had said it, Martin Luther King's quote, it's not the actual act. The act is terrible and horrible, but I feel like the biggest travesty is that no one else stood up to say anything. Mm-hmm. No one stood up and said, that's not okay.
Or knock that cop off of George Floyd.
You know what I mean?
Like that was the other hard part of that video for me, was just seeing other cops just standing there. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, they're just as guilty. Like, we do need to speak up. We do need to. Anyway, Tabiona.
Mm-hmm. It's a great segue.
Sorry, you're right. Like,
so good.
But I'll go off on all sorts of tangents. I need to stop. But
it's okay.
So you were the coach.
Yeah.
So what happened? You're coach of the basketball team.
You want me to speak as like you're ignorant and you don't know?
Do you want me to tell the story?
I mean, we can tell it together. Okay. Since we developed the spark.
We do have a spark. I think it's bigger than a spark now.
We can tell it together.
But no, so what I read was was it one fan repeatedly? Was the same guy each time?
So I'll start us. So we had a game at our place. It was a home game for us.
And where is your school?
Our school is in Cottonwood Heights.
Okay.
Right. So we had a home game, and Tabiona was I said the name, you see, was They were visiting our place, and they were a rival, right? So it was a rivalry game. I'm thankful that in the past couple of years we've been able to build some culture at our school where now we got some people that are coming to games.
What does the diversity look like at your school?
Well, I mean, the diversity is still low.
Okay.
I'm more so talking about culture, not even diversity.
Got it.
Right. So, our sports culture, because sometimes people have a tough time marrying being a Jesus follower and a great fan. Like, you can't cheer if you love Jesus. This is the weirdest thing. But no, in our school, we had a student section, which we've never had before. This game, I mean, it's packed. It's right on. Our gym is small, so it's loud, and it's all these things, right? And we had dealt with something kind of in the year before with the same school, but not necessarily directly with the school. It was more like a referee thing. So that's harder to, right? Because a referee's not going to come out and call you the N-word, but they're going to treat you and whistle you like you are, right? Mm-hmm. That's a whole nother story. So we didn't even talk about it. This particular game, it was pretty heated and back and forth, whatever, loud. Well, the two gentlemen who were with Tabiona, because the gym was so small, they ended up standing in our student section, which I'm not exactly sure how a 70-year-old man and a what we learned to be 40-something-year-old cop who was not dressed in cop clothes that night ended up in our student section, but that's neither here nor there. I received a technical foul. And in the as that happened, obviously their fans are cheering, which is normal. I get it. Well, the one guy yells, "Blackie, go home! Blackie, go home!" He yells that, right? And to that, one of the students in our student section, who happened to be the son of our head of school, turned around and was like, "Not even. Like, you don't do that. We don't talk like that around here." Like, he was very, very 16-year-old. I adopted him as my son after this.
Man, what courage for that kid.
I mean,
to
just
stand
nuts.
up and say something. That is
he,
so awesome.
He will want for nothing that I have. He'll always have whatever he wants from me. If I can do it, he can. He's my guy. So he turns around, he tells a guy, and he, the old guy is with somebody else, right? Who we later learned was a cop. We didn't know that then. So he's listening. The cops listen to him yell, "Blackie, go home," and doesn't say anything, doesn't say a word. Well, I didn't hear it. Which you can imagine why is loud and all that. And I'm in the game, but we lose the game and we're done. But they come in the office after the game and they tell me, "Hey, this happened. This guy was yelling this, and I feel like we need to address it." And I was like, "Wow!" Like, I was sad. I was a lot of things, but I was like, "Okay, now I'm an athletic director, so let me make a phone call." So I made a phone call to their principal, and who was also their athletic director, who up until this point we had a great relationship. He's been very genuine, seemingly, all of these different things. And I said, "Hey, man, we're coming to you guys in like 3 weeks. So if this guy can yell 'Blackie, go home' in our gym, I can't imagine what he could say at your place." "Tim, I'm really sorry, my friend." And in the meantime, like, there was something that came out that said there was a death threat that I made to one of their players or whatever. So that was like, and he kind of like snuck that in, like, "Yeah, well, we heard that you actually did." And I was like, "Yeah, Tim, I know you wouldn't say." Bro, come on. Let's not try to water this down or like play the blame game. No. So he said, "Hey, I assure you, we're going to take care of it. We're going to make sure that everything is good. We're going to make sure you're safe." So we are the day before the game. So I called him again. I said, "Hey, we're coming to you guys tomorrow. How's everything looking? It's going to be great. Yada, yada, yada." Great. Called him the day of because there's a snowstorm. And I'm like, "Hey, Darren, look." I said his name. "Hey, look, we're coming. Everything's good. Do you think, how's the weather down there? Whatever. Weather's fine. If anything happens, we'll get a hotel for you guys in town. If anything." I mean, he was really looking to, look out. We get there, and that's when things change. My JV coach doesn't come to the game, so I ended up coaching the JV game. Quiet. Right, it's a JV game in 1A basketball. Right, just everybody's mom might be there. So in this gym, I'm hearing this yelling. Now I've never seen this man. Right, so I don't even know who I'm looking for, any of that. But I didn't even think about it because my friend told me that we were taken care of. It'd be like your host telling me, "Hey, you can come up to American Heritage and we're good." Cool. I took it as face value. Guys clapping, yelling, just a dead ball, just to the point where I was like, "God, where is that coming from?" So directly across from me is this guy. He gets my attention. He stops clapping. I looked at him. He was like, "You're an asshole." And I was like, "Huh?
Whoa.
What? Nothing happened. We're sitting here. It's a JV game. We're just hanging. I'm not even hardly coaching. Sorry to my guys, but I'm really not doing much. I'm not really thinking about this game, Right. So then I'm looking at him, and it dawned on me, this guy has oxygen. He's connected to oxygen, which was the description they gave me of the guy who said what he said at our place. I was like, same guy. I stand up, immediately stand up. Turn. I know their athletic director's at the scores table. I look, I say, hey, Darren, need to talk as soon as possible. Let's get this. So I go and talk to him and tell him exactly what happens. He goes and have a conversation with the guy. Now, I don't find out this conversation later, but anyway, the conversation basically went, Darren approaches the guy. The guy says to him, we have all these issues going on in our city and at our school, and the only thing you can think of is making friends with a darkie. That was his response to Darren. This is, again, I found this out at the trial. So this is months later I found this stuff out. But I'm giving it to you in the order that it happened in that place. We go out in the hallway, Darren, two police officers, my head of school who came out just fuming, and then myself. And they were like, the first thing they asked me, hey, Tim, do you still want to play the game? I said, absolutely. We came down here. We're not quitting. We're not walking away. You guys are going to do what you said you're going to do. All we're asking is for you to get this guy from in front of me. I'm coaching. He's directly in front of me across the gym. Can you guys just put him behind your bench so I can't see him? That's all I asked him. Well, you know that if we do that, there's gonna be more racial slurs. That was the response. We can't do this because then if we do it, there's gonna be racial slurs. So then to that, I said in my simple mind, is this guy a racist? I asked that question out loud. Well, no, he's not a racist. He's got black guys who work for him, and I said, well, slaves had masters, so you're not telling me much about this, right? And I go to church with them, and there's that whole can of stuff. So I said, finally, okay, can y'all just make sure that it's under control, right? And they said, well, we'll make sure that we police it, and the police guys getting all, are you guys trying to tell me we got a racist town? He's getting all defensive. I said, I never said that. I just asked if the guy was racist because he called me blackie. I later found out he called me a F and N. So
that's what I read
in
the quote.
So there's that. So we have our game. We're getting close to halftime. I have already received a technical foul. Matter of fact, let's backtrack for just a second. My best player has already received technical foul. He's tall. He's really, really good. They're screaming all kind of stuff at him, and the refs are just allowing it to happen. Second quarter, end of the quarter, they're holding the ball for the last shot, and you can literally see the fans in the video yelling and pointing at our player, trying to taunt him and get him to respond. He's 16 years old. So I jump up off the bench. I yell. I say, switch. I'm trying to create a switch, make sure my guy gets closer to our bench where he can't hear. Well, whatever they said, which I learned later, which was not good, he turned around and he just was like, F you, I'm sick of this, and just like went off to the fans. To that, he gets a technical foul and gets thrown out of the game. So I'm pissed. But I don't respond because I'm black, and I know that the response that everybody's looking for is the angry black man who's going to create a. So I called a timeout, went over to the ref. I said, hey, here's the deal. This isn't being called fairly, and if it continues, we're just going to have to leave. This is what I said. God is my witness. He took out his whistle, blew it, and gave me a T. I said it like that, didn't yell it. I literally am communicating exactly what happened. Gave me a T. I turned to the scores table and I said, this is what I repeated to the scores table what I said. They couldn't even hear me because I wasn't yelling. Of course, I got to sit down and all of that. So the quarter ends. My best player's kicked out. We're down by 4. I'm like, we don't really have a chance to win. I'm really struggling with this. They're cheering because now I've gotten a technical foul. He's gotten a technical foul and ejected. So the fans are just going nuts, right? I have accountability with me at this particular game because I knew that it could go bad. I just knew it. So I have had a couple of guys on my staff that were just there to make sure that I was cool.
So when you say you had accountability, you talked to them and said, hey, let's make sure we're...
Yeah, like you got me though.
Yeah.
Right.
Like you have me.
Yeah.
Because I don't really know how this is going to play out. But if I get to a place where I'm about to, you know what I'm saying, just keep me under control. Which I've never snapped. So nobody even knows what that looks like.
Right.
Halftime comes. I take a second. My team is crying, real tears, as they're going to the locker room. So if they're dealing with that, I can send a couple people up there. I sit there, try to gather myself, tie on my shoe. I'm hearing the chant. I'm hearing all of the stuff, because they're gonna talk to me until I leave. My guy sitting next to me, he says, hey, Tim, don't look up there. Don't look up there. Don't look up there. And I'm like, he's telling me not to look up there because there's something to see. So I'm trying not to look up there, but I'm, what do you do when someone tells you?
For sure.
You stand up and you look up there. So I looked up there, and of course there's a couple guys like hands up, calling me out, wanting to, you know what I mean? And you're starting to hear all of these different things being said. And for that next 10 seconds, I can't even tell you what happened. All I know is I was getting carried out of the gym by a couple of guys who did what they're supposed to do. They took care of me. And as I was getting carried out, it was get that N, the F out of here, get that F and N out of here, F and N, over and over again. So we play the second half, we lose the game. We go to trial, and I learned that at our place, not only did the guy who yelled the Black Eagle home, he didn't know that I had gotten a technical foul. And what he said after I got the technical foul was the F and N deserved it. And he said it to the cop. So when I wrap my head around all of these things, I am the next black guy who dies if I am not grabbed and constrained by my own guys, because nobody else knows all of the narrative that's happening with the F and N and all of this stuff. So now
they just see you exploding.
They just see me explode, and the cop who accepted it as okay will now respond as a cop
and feel justified in responding.
And feel justified in response. And when I say that out loud to people, and I say it to my family, I say it to my mother, she can't not, and she's heard the story as many times as I can tell it, but she can't stop crying, because the reality of the ugliness of racism, it doesn't really set in until it gets close to you. And before that time, I was that easygoing dude. Like I said, overcoming was just a regular day for me. I get up and eat cereal and overcome. Like, that's what I do. But in that moment, I realized that I could have died in front of my 11-year-old son, who I decided to take to the game with me. And to the 2 black children that my head of school adopted, who are also there. Like, my son was going to watch me die had I not had somebody there with me, because I was in a town that was racist. So when people say that it doesn't exist and, it's just a skin color thing and you guys are making, the reality is, if you have racism and if you have people in power that allow it, and you have people, like you said, in the stands that don't say anything to the guy yelling F and N, like a little bit of personal and accountability around you to say, yo, you shut up. It's not how because if that's not really how you get down, then somebody's going to say something. So I'm very, very careful to believe that that's not a town issue, that that's not a people group issue, that that's just an I'm not an idiot. This is a real issue that we have. And so, that was my experience there. And, I'm forever different because of it. And I'm better than what I was. I'm more forgiving than what I was at that moment, because in that moment you couldn't tell me that a 70-year-old white man wasn't racist. You couldn't tell me. Oh. If I look at a guy, I had a test that I did.
The cop too.
Yeah, the cop. I mean, you think about. I mean, the guy with the gun.
Yeah.
It's gonna protect his city from the angry black guy. Had I not had anybody there. So this is in Utah. This is to the ex-Ute that everybody loves, and all of that. And all that stuff goes out the window. Yeah. I had somebody tell me, I don't understand what they're doing in the NFL. I wish they would just play. They're getting paid millions of dollars, and why would you take a knee, and why would you not come out of the locker room? And Tim, I don't understand that. And I said, well, here's the issue. It's real simple. After they finish the 60-minute football game, and they get showered in their locker rooms and plush everything and get through with the media, they go into the parking garage, they get in their car, and they pull out onto the street. They're a black man. Period. That's why they don't come out of the locker room. That's why they take a knee up to come against injustice. Not because they hate the flag. That's not because they hate the country. Because there's injustice in the world, and we're using my platform to peacefully protest. You understand what I'm saying? So yeah, that was my experience, and like I said, I'm definitely different because of it. I'm back to giving people the benefit of the doubt, because I just can't sleep at night without being me. I refuse not to be me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I refuse to let that experience now control the narrative of my mental health. You know what I mean? Like, where I'm now worried about every little I don't even live like that. I can't.
Right.
So sorry. There you go.
Jeez. Yeah, I read that as you were walking out, somebody you said put their hands up, but I mean, I think what you meant was they put their hands up to go. Like, they wanted to fight. Mm-hmm. And it said that was the first time you would actually okay, let's go.
Ever.
And right. And they then they pulled you out. And,
Yeah.
and the article, at least the one that I read, I forget who wrote it, but it definitely they wrote it the way you told it.
Yeah.
Which I liked because you never know, right? They really can kind of twist things around. But I mean, they mentioned the cop, they mentioned you know how nobody said anything. They mentioned everything that you said as far as you know the horrible things that they said, and that's the other thing that they forget is like you're showing kids that.
You're showing them it's okay to talk act like that.
Crazy.
Well, you should have seen the way the fans' kids were responding. They were all about it. They were all They you know what I'm saying? And that's why they thought I threatened to kill the kid, the other kid on the team, because he was being disrespectful to me at our place. And I told him, I said, hey, you're not about that life, bro. Like that, you better chill out. You're not about that life. So his Tabiona, interpretation of that was that you threatened my life.
Well, and yeah, talk about a sheltered place. Like,
what are you saying?
I mean, it is in the middle of. I've been to Tempe.
Have you been there?
Yeah, I have.
You just drop in there,
so
don't you?
I moved to Utah. I moved to Heber when I moved to Utah. So I used to go to like our high school competed against like Duchesne once in a while, and like Union, and so that's why. But I mean, yeah, I don't think. I mean, I showed him on Google Maps. It's like 12 blocks square. Like it is. I mean, it's tiny, but obviously, I think that's where like these conversations are important in Utah, because it doesn't matter if it's Tabiona or Spanish Fork, right? Like we still don't have a lot of diversity, and we still there are a lot of people that still don't have their own personal connections and experiences to help them like realize what's going on. Like even the kneeling thing, like the Kaepernick, like I'll admit, like I had a problem with that in the beginning, because it is kind of what you tell yourself if you're not experiencing it, or if you don't have a friend that's experiencing it and reminding you what that's like. Yeah. Like just hearing how you had to keep it chill in a game. Like I would lose my like, and I don't have to worry about that. Like I've never thought about that. Like I can yell at a ref, I can call him a bitch, I can do whatever I want. I can and not have to worry about getting, like you were actually thinking about the guy with the gun. That's stuff that we need to hear and understand, because I think that there are a lot more people than not that will respond the right way.
Well, I mean,
they just need to understand. They need to learn.
It's such a good example of the underlying racism, right, that exists. I think the first step is just acknowledging that it's there, right? I mean, you have to acknowledge that it's there if you're ever going to do anything about it. But I mean, there's so many saddening examples of that. But
so many. I mean, just hearing about. Yahosh, do you have any experiences? I mean, what you already gave us.
We could be out there.
You gave us a great example about your own neighborhood.
Well, nothing happened.
Well, I understand.
It was
just the fact that you had to think about that. Like, is there anything else to add? Like experiences in Utah, maybe recently? I mean, I'm sure you have a lot of them.
I mean, I've had some in Utah, outside of Utah, dealing with athletics, dealing in social settings. I mean, what type of experience? Because
isn't that sad?
Maybe
isn't that sad? You should pick one.
Right.
Pick one.
Yeah. Which one do you want?
Maybe something that most people in Utah would never think is just happening on a regular basis for you here.
Oh, right. I don't feel I'm getting racism every day, but from what I've seen and I'm experiencing, I don't feel it every day. But I can tell you, I mean, when I first, I don't know which one I want to share. Well, we'll stay with basketball, but I'll go from a player standpoint. When I was in Mesa, Arizona, we were hosting a team, and I'm not going to shout out names. I don't know. Anyway,
well, you get the privilege of them not knowing who the school is, so nobody can just throw out names.
True. Well, yeah, we were playing.
My sparkle.
I had an awesome game, great game.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Okay.
It was right
Fine.
there. I googled your name.
I'm sorry.
And that story was there, and I'm like, and I thought that was irrelevant. That's kind of what we're talking about, right? Sure. And so anyway. And we can beep it if you want, Tim.
You're all good. I'm serious.
Okay.
Playing against this team, having a great game. I am new to the school, and I have a girlfriend. This is my first like real girlfriend, and she's awesome, and she's rooting for me. That's my baby, yeah. But it's a rival team, and every time she cheered for me, and they would yell at her and call her names and say you black bee and all these things like that. And as I'm playing, and games end, and I'm in the locker room, right, and she walks out and she grabs my friend Aaron and was like, Aaron, like they're calling me names, like, can you just stand with me? And so she walks out with him, and he one of the guys out there, you stupid, black bee or whatever. And then Aaron's like, what'd you say? And they start fighting. And then a girl jumps on Aaron's back. My girlfriend at the time grabs this girl jumps on her back. So she's fighting two girls. Anyway, and I still feel really bad about this because, obviously it breaks down, cops can't come. She gets suspended from school. She's trying to help protect her friend who was protecting her, and she gets suspended from school. She was called the racial slur. Her friend was attacked. She feared for her safety. And me, I feel like I probably could have more pull or something, but I was just like, oh, it's a fight, like, I don't know. I just got here, like, I think there are people even in my own community that are scared to step up and say something because of their own safety or standing, so that's an experience.
Well, there's not a lot of diversity there either.
No. You could pick up Mesa Mountain View High School and you could drop it in Provo, Utah.
Totally right.
I mean,
Gilbert,
there were about
Mesa.
25 black kids at that school, and we all ate lunch together.
Right.
Like lunch was segregated. Like Latinos over here, blacks over here. It was really segregated.
It's a pretty affluent school.
And like I've had a handful of like experiences that have been vivid, but since these conversations have came up, I've started to remember more, and friends are reaching out to me and saying, hey, I remember this time, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry I didn't say nothing. I'm sorry I didn't stick up for you. Wow. I remember my first experience is when it was a year after I'd moved from Vegas, just moved to Utah. I was at a party, at my friend's party, and, I was talking to a girl, having a good time, and I think she liked me, but there was another girl I was waiting to get to the party. She got there, and I was like, okay, see ya. I started talking to this other girl. The girl that I was talking to goes from group to group, start saying things, whispering to these people, and I'm looking and I'm seeing that she's talking, but it didn't matter because the girl that I liked was there, and we were talking. Next thing I know, someone pours a drink on me, throws drinks at me, and then they start calling me names, and I have my friends there, and they didn't say anything. I was the only black kid there at the party. They didn't say anything, and I'll remember that for the rest of my life. This is a horrible feeling because I had never experienced racism, coming from Vegas, and then now I'm the only black kid there. It was funny too, because not funny, but it was interesting. Like 12 years ago, I had a friend message me. It's like, hey man, how you doing? I'm like, oh good. Get a social media, you reconnect with people. I just want to say, I'm sorry, man. I should have been a better friend to you. And I'm like, and I knew exactly what he was talking about, and I was like, man, like we're good. And it's just, these things are happening. And that was I shared that story with my parents last week, and they're like, I never knew that happened to you. Like my brothers just didn't know that happened to me. But then we all started sharing our own experiences, that we hadn't really communicated with each other, But yeah, these things, they happened and they're still happening, and people need to know that it's not okay and it shouldn't be our normal.
It's interesting you say that you guys started sharing. It's almost like what I caught from that was it's just such a normal thing that we don't make a special deal out of it and share it. Like it's just normal. Like that's sad. I
was 13 years old.
Jeez.
That just made me think that there are about the instances that my family has no idea about. Like my family has no idea some of the things that if they did know, they'd probably be different. And we probably need to talk about it, but like when you just sat down with your, I just thought about my parents don't know it all. I've had a gun put on me by a security guard, and totally not doing it at my own house.
Sheesh.
So it threw my windshield pointed at my head.
That close. Yeah.
And it's like he said, it's just one of those things we just yo, what happened? I just got through the day. Wake up tomorrow, try it again. You know what I mean? Like
Eat
that's
cereal and overcome, as you say.
eat cereal, overcome.
14,
Like, you know,
14 years old, I had a gun pulled on me by a police
At
officer.
14?
14. Yeah. Me and my friend, it was just a little fad in our town where we'd go around and we'd like draw on people's windows and like decorate rooms, mess people's rooms up. And anyway, it was late, kind of, I guess, past curfew for if you're 14 or whatever. And me and my friends, we went and drawn on, you know, some of our friends' window, and we
Not like like it's all good.
no, like
All fun.
hearts, like
Yeah.
hearts,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and like, you know, kiss marks and things like that. And so we start walking across the lawn, and the police car comes up, and he gets out, gun pointed at me. I'm with like three or four of my friends are with me, but the gun's at me, and he's pointed at me. I'm across the lawn for like 2 minutes until back up, and he was scared. Like he was just so scared. Get down, like just like I was super scared because I knew he was scared. I'm like, I'm about to die tonight. I'm about to be killed, you know. But I was 14 years old.
See, and that's the difference. Like, that's the thought that goes through your head.
14, 15.
You know what I mean? You said the same thing. Like, I remember in high school, we were paintball guns in a park, and the neighbors called us. So the cops showed up with guns pulled on us because they thought we had like real like rifles, you know, but like I was never scared.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Like that, not what I mean. I had guns pointed at me, and I was just like, oh, you're stupid. Like, whatever.
and you actually had a gun.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a paintball.
Like a
gun.
paintball
Yeah.
gun.
I had a bar of soap.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine if I had a paintball gun and the cops put up on me. I think that goes different.
Yeah. No, for sure it does.
You know what I mean? Like that's the weirdest thing. And you didn't even think, like, even though you have like something that looks like a rifle, you didn't even
night?
think, like you weren't
Is
even
it night?
Yeah,
bro. That's a rap.
No,
They be slow song singing at my funeral, just singing slow
that's
songs.
what I'm saying. Like that's where it's
God,
it manifests itself. The racism manifests itself, right? Like even in these protests, like you see some of these guys in these rural white communities come strapped. I mean, they've got ARs and AKs and vests, and they're just like, can you imagine if that was a crew of black guys that showed up like that? Like how that would end? You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't go well.
yeah.
But
Do you think that is all? It's funny because I'm thinking about my time in Southside Chicago. The way they treated police officers there, like I'd be scared to be a cop there. Like there was no respect. It was like, and I mean, I know that it goes both ways, but I think that that's something too important. Like is it always, I guess I'm trying to look at it from every angle, you know, like that cop that showed up, like where does that come from for him? Like you see a black teenager, like soap on a window, like smooches and hearts. I don't know if he saw the hearts or whatever, but
He didn't know what we were doing.
like where, if he's a new cop, maybe he's not working in a black area. He's in Mesa, right?
No, actually, that happened in Cedar City, and I love my time
Cedar
in
City.
Cedar City. I have a handful of that's
Okay.
a small town,
right?
Yeah,
Like, so where does that,
where does the
is
fear
it
come
media?
from?
it's
Like,
a lot of
because that's really the only experience that dude has probably had with.
media is the roles that black people are allowed to play on TV. You know, to that point. I mean, now we're starting to diversify a little bit. Now we're allowed to be superheroes,
funny.
which makes a difference.
You're right. I'm watching a documentary right now. I'm trying to remember his name.
What's crazy is I never thought about it, but it does.
And he talked about idolizing. The only heroes he had to idolize from the screen were white people. Like he was being the cowboy. It was Belafonte. That's the actor. He was just like, he was talking about how I idolized the cowboy when really the cowboy was just doing exactly what we are fighting. Like we're the Indians.
Yeah.
How come I'm like idolizing a cowboy? Like, and so he talked about how that kind of slowly transitioned into finally seeing like Sidney, how do I say, is it Portier?
Portier.
Like playing,
Portier.
like getting the main role and how much that meant to him. But that's the thing. Like, I think that there's a lot of people that they see a black guy and they just are relating it to what they see on TV.
Absolutely.
Like that's a thug, right? Like that's the other part that needs to change. And so, because I think that most police officers are good people,
Absolutely.
right? Sure. Like they want to do, like I know so many, they're good people, but it's also hard. Like they don't get paid a lot and they deal with the scum of the earth of all shapes and sizes and colors, right? And
Can I ask a
And
question?
they're human and they have bias.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And so how do we overcome that? Like, what are we doing to train officers to not have that stereotype?
Yeah.
Because that's wrong. Anyway, what was your question, Tim?
And maybe there's no answer, but you said you have a lot of police officer friends,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What would it look like if the police officers acknowledged a police officer problem?
Well, I think we've seen it with this one finally. There's been some
Right? Yeah, but like, and I'm hearing, like, for instance, I saw this post yesterday. It was, I felt bad as I could feel yesterday, but it was from a police officer's wife. Right? She's endured a week, as she called it, a week from hell.
Right.
Right? She's endured a week from hell because her husband, who is missing soccer games to protect and serve, and he paints this great picture, which I completely believe about her husband. But she's experienced a week of hell. And I'm thinking to myself, like, and it's a bad thought, but it's like, oh, just a week? Like, I get it. Like, imagine what it feels like for your whole life to be a good person, to be a person who has something to offer that's positive to society, but yet there's a narrative being painted either directly or indirectly through news media, through all of these different things. Imagine being that guy. And it's not to say, like, I have so much respect for people in power who do it the right way. 100% respect. But now it's like, it's going to take everybody. Like, just like it takes the white guys to say something about racism, it's going to take the cops to say something about police brutality. It's going to take the people who are jerks and who know of jerks, who know of people who are jerks to cops. It's going to take them to start speaking up. But right now, we have to talk about the narrative in the order that it's being presented. So right now we're talking about Black Lives Matter. And once we figure out, okay, Black lives do matter. Okay, now let's talk about cops. And then let's talk about the next group. Because we can't, like, if we keep on trying to fight the narrative with this other side, is, like, again, like you said, you have amazing cop friends. And there's amazing, like, pilots, right? But, like, we can't afford to have very many bad ones.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's what Chris Rock said.
Right.
You can't.
It's very true. That's a great analogy.
Like, you can't afford to have a couple of bad pilots. Like, who, like,
can't afford to have one bad pilot. I mean,
you really can't.
And you're right. And I just think it's important for everybody to empathize. Like, you acknowledging the lady saying it's been, she says it's a week from hell.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of cops' wives, it's probably high stress.
Absolutely.
A lot more than 1 week, because at any time it could be over.
Yep.
But it's very important for them to be able to hear, like, okay, well, I felt like that my whole life.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden now there's this, like,
and once again, it's not.
Okay, I have your back now. Like,
On both
I
sides.
feel like now I, as the police officer's wife, can empathize with you, black friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I hate this feeling about my husband being out working. So if you felt that way your whole life, like, I got to help. Like, I don't want you to feel this either.
Yeah.
Sorry. And like, that's what we're missing.
Yep.
Like, this conversation right here is exactly that.
Mm-hmm.
It's everyone has struggles, but I've heard you mention a couple times, like, I'm sorry for your week of hell. Like, I'm how old now? 36 years, right? Like, I know hell's a strong thing to say, but I mean, I'm 36. I was a star basketball player in your state. Like, I moved here. My whole family moved here. I love it here. I work at a high school. I help young women.
I hope white.
I still have to be worried about walking in my neighborhood at night because I'm scared somebody might not know who I am and think the wrong thing. Crazy. Mm-hmm. And so we obviously have a long way to go, but we won't get anywhere until we do this. Like, I've learned more today and been reminded more of today than I have in 15 years. And I have a lot of things that I've got to work on.
And I love that. I love that your heart is open, because it didn't take statistics and proof, and it's just a conversation and personal experiences. And this is my personal experience and his, and I can only speak for me. He can only speak for him and you. But for us to be open and that love is there, and that respect, I mean, we can get so much done.
Well, and the connection you and I have, Yahosh, like, it like, to your point earlier about making those connections right? Like I've got 2 black people that work for me, right? Like, and that does help. So I'm like, no, obviously, I'll hire a good person. I don't care, but that's not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough, right? And but when I talk to somebody that I like, it's like the platform you were mentioning earlier, Tim. Like, you have a lot of responsibility now because you do have this platform where you can connect with both sides. But the reason it's going to connect on both sides is because they know you. They love you, right? They love that their kids love you. And now something's going to sink in. Like, it sinks in because I know you as this spiritual, incredibly talented, just smile on your face all the time guy. And I'm going to listen to that. He's my friend, and he's got a heart like this. And hearing you say the things that you're saying, and then it goes to Tim, like, you two are obviously close. And so now it's the same thing, right? Like, I have that connection to you. And so I think that is what we need more than anything right now, is to be able or be willing. Like, I'm so glad Andrew had the idea to do this, because it's how many more people now are going to hear this and say, okay, I've got to be proactive. Like, it's not just about throwing money at it.
Well, love is a verb.
Right. Yeah.
Love is a verb.
Right.
No.
It's an
I
action.
can say I love you, but how do you?
Right.
What'd Jesus say? Feed my sheep. Do something about it. Go, do, act.
Well, right. And this is going to be way more powerful than what they hear on the news or whatever other narrative, like, because they know us, they know you. And these are things they're not hearing right now. Like, we are in our comfortable little bubbles, right? And especially here in Utah. And so it's such a unique opportunity and privilege to be able to have a couple guys like you guys to come in and educate us and make us feel safe in talking about it and not worried about, like, offending you or hurting. Because I think a lot of people do struggle with that.
Yeah.
A lot of white people do struggle with that. Like, they don't want to say the wrong thing. Like, I don't want to offend them. Like, I was telling Lena, like, I think people are scared to say black people. I mentioned that earlier. I'm like, do you care about that? She's like, no, I'm a black person. You're a white person, right? Like, but I hate that we're in that frame of mind as a population. Like, we're so scared to offend people. And if we are, we won't talk. Anyway, I'm rambling, but I really appreciate it. You
Hey, well,
guys.
thank you for having us. It was,
Yeah, you guys took a
Appreciate
risk.
that.
And you don't realize it, but it's a risk that you take to talk about things that people don't really want to talk about. But, and taking a chance on us, because the results are not always positive. And so we realized that. And I mean, I personally wanted, I thank you guys for trusting and believing as good people, like, this is something that needs to be talked about, and whatever that costs you, I want to encourage you guys that it'll be worth it. You know what I mean? Like,
I definitely
sure.
believe that.
it'll be worth it.
Well, it's nice of you to say that, but I don't feel like calling this a risk would be an insult to what you guys have to go through. I'm sorry, but I mean, it's still very kind of you to say.
Oh, sure.
And I appreciate
At
it.
the end, the only thing I hope for is, going back to what Tim said, just let's see everyone as people, as children of God, and let's look for the good. Let's find what we're looking for. So let's change our perspective. And when we see bad things happening, let's look for the good inside of that bad, right? And let's give people the grace to screw up, because we're all going to screw up, right?
Right.
I'm going to do something, and I'm going to ask, just like we did with this, like, I asked for grace from you guys, that if I said something wrong or racially insensitive, that you're not going to think differently of me, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to have that kind of attitude and give that to everyone, right? Like, go about your day looking for that good. And the talk, lift where you stand, I think it's the most important message we can have. Like, the most important work is going to be done in the walls of our own home.
Yep.
Do what you can.
So start
You can.
there.
Yep.
Right? Start there. Last thing, I want to give each of you guys, like, what is your parting message? Like, wrap this up, parting message. What would it be?
For me, I say be intentional. Be intentional. And do I need to expound upon that in terms of your relationships, in terms of the books, the things that you're reading, you're showing your children, the conversations that you incite amongst people that look like you and the people that don't look like you? Be intentional. Make an effort. Don't wait for those opportunities to come to you.
Oh, love it.
My head of school told me this as I was leaving to come here. And he's been funny about reminding me, and it's kind of because he loves the song, right? So he's like, "Hey Tim, hold on." And I'm like, "All right," and I told him, I said, "I hate we even put a song out because I've been tested probably more now since trying to give everybody else hope and trying to tell everybody else the right response. I've been tested now to not do any of those things." So I would encourage people in that, times are gonna slow. I think eventually times are gonna get better, but that song is really about the meantime. Like, it's about what you do in the meantime. Don't lose hope. Don't lose faith. Like Yahosh said, influence where you can, where you are in your home. But in the meantime, like, just hold on to hope. Hold on to faith. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.